Hi, everyone. I'm going to do a debate review today, and it's going to be pretty exciting stuff, so stay tuned. I'm going to review actually a debate on whether or not theism, or anti-theism, I should say, is rational. And I watched this debate. It was on the Modern Day Debate channel. I've linked the debate. I'm actually going to watch quite a bit of the debate today, not just a tiny portion, because it was highly amusing. And I think that it'll be entertaining for you to listen to this. So we've got these here. Let me set up what's going on here. So in this particular debate, on the Modern Day Debate channel that just occurred a few days ago, we've got Robert Reed and somebody called Amy, who are presenting an atheist position and anti-theistic position. And then we have a couple of other people. We have a Christian and we have a girl called Godless Girl on the other end of the spectrum. And so they were presenting the the position against anti-theism. So it's quite interesting. And so I want to say, before I go over there, I want to say hi to everybody I see in the chat. I see Cameron, Slam, Susan, Spacebar Apologetics, Ronan, Isaiah, Spacebar. I see all you guys in there, so that's great. So thanks so much for coming by. I know I have a tendency to go early. Sometimes it's because I've been so excited about this particular debate. I just decided I was going to go ahead and start a couple of minutes early. So without further ado, let me go ahead and switch our screens here over to the action. Oops, I did something wrong. Hold on. So we're going to start, actually, I'm going to give you a little preview towards the middle of the debate, and then we're going to go back to the beginning of the debate. But this middle part was really interesting. And so we're going to start off with this middle part here. And so I'm going to do that in one moment, as soon as I get us set up. Okay, so one of the basic premises that Robert comes up with a lot is he likes to straw man the Christian position and to pretend that we are bound by Mosaic law. And that is something that I don't think is a terribly honest way to view it, because the Christians, there are no Christians today that I know of, except for a few kind of wingnuts who would actually say that gay people should be stoned. That was something that was under Mosaic law in an ancient Near Eastern culture thousands of years ago. And so to pretend like Christians are actually going out there and thinking that we should go stone gay people is just not really an honest position, because again, only a couple of wingnuts like people at the Westboro Baptist Church think that way. And so that's not something that's endorsed by the Christian New Covenant. Okay, so let's start off with that. Let me double check I've got sound on here. Yes, we do. Okay, here we go.
I mean, that is the most honest and quickest I have ever seen a Christian give those answers. The other question was then just moving on to homosexuality. Would you also...
Actually, just before this, and I don't know if I'll get this far into this portion of the debate, but I wanted to say just before this something that she had asked. Amy asked whether or not slavery was supported, the word supported, in the Bible. And I would say that slavery was tolerated in the Bible. And one of the things that I would point to, just to give evidence for some of the issues that were going on with slaves, was in the ancient context, in every single society, slavery was quite prevalent, and it was an economic foundation for many places. And that's not saying that today I would say that is right. No, it's not right. But it certainly wasn't exactly equivalent to antebellum slavery. According to Leviticus 25:39-43, slaves were to be treated as hired workers, not slaves. According to Exodus 21:2 and Deuteronomy 15:12, all slaves were to be freed after 6 years. Freed slaves were to be liberally supplied with grain, wine, and livestock, according to Deuteronomy 15:12-15. And every 15th year of the Jubilee, all Hebrew slaves were to be freed, even those owned by foreigners, according to Leviticus 25:10 and 47-54. In special cases, slaves could choose to remain with their masters if they felt it was in their best interest, according to Deuteronomy 15-17. If a Hebrew slave sold himself to a foreigner, he reserved the right to buy his freedom, according to Leviticus 25:47-49, and was still to be treated as a hired man, according to Leviticus 25:53. While foreign slaves could be made slaves for life, the laws regarding general treatment of slaves applied to them as well, according to Leviticus 24:22 and Numbers 15:15-16. The law made it clear that foreigners were not inferiors who could be mistreated, according to Exodus 23:9. Instead, they were to be loved just as fellow Israelites, according to Leviticus 19:33-34. And so there are some specific rules on slavery that God put down onto the Israelites, and escaped slaves were not to be captured and returned to their masters. Instead, escaped slaves were to be given shelter and care. And so it was very different than the portrayal that people are giving. So now we're going to go and see what Amy has to say next. Actually, let me make the screen larger so you guys can see this whole thing.
I agree. There are passages in the Bible that say to put homosexuals to death.
In certain circumstances, yes, but that's Old Testament.
So here we have Gary Hall, he's the Christian here, and he's saying, well, yes, we do have this, we do have instances in the Old Testament, ancient Near Eastern culture, that was under God's law at the time, and it was a way that God was establishing societies in those times. And so you can see Robert getting all fired up right here. And so let's see what Robert has to say.
I want to hear that.
I love that
Why should we
saying.
put gay people
That's
to
the
death
Old
for
Testament.
any reason? Assuming they haven't committed a capital crime here in Texas, because we'll kill you by the middle of next week. You hedge. So I want to know why you think it's okay to kill a homosexual.
You see what he's doing here. Now, of course, Gary never said he thinks it's okay to kill a homosexual. Robert is actually doing a straw man position. And Robert has done this frequently. And this is the reason why I'm focusing on Robert today so much, is because Robert also misrepresented me in a tweet that got him a lot of activity, completely misrepresenting my take on the Nazis during World War II. And so here's what he's doing here. He's erected a straw man about Gary.
Just based, and let me clarify, just based on the fact that they're attracted to the same gender. What circumstances do you need to put that person to death? I want to know that.
I don't think anybody should be put to death. I'd say death penalties.
Now you see Robert here? He doesn't like that Gary just said that. Watch his face.
So we could,
Wait, I think she just asked that.
Well, wait.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
First of all, Gary didn't say that, but what argument do you have that they ought not?
They haven't done anything wrong. That's why.
What's wrong? Is it just going to boil down to what your preference is?
Which I've already said that. And I will never hide the fact that it is my preference.
So you know what Godless Girl is doing here, and I find this actually really amusing, but Godless Girl has figured out that to be coherent with atheism, one has to endorse moral relativism. Now, a little bit later, you're going to see Amy gets a bit confused about what moral realism actually is defined as. But what Godless Girl is saying, she's saying if you're an atheist, you don't have an objective moral standard against which you can judge any sort of actions. And so Robert is not going to like that. Amy's not going to like that. They're going to say it's their preference. Let's go on.
How about this?
And I believe it's objectively wrong.
I'm a big fan.
Having an argument? Are you just here to tell us you don't like it?
You're right. And you know what I am? I'm going to sit here and tell you that I don't like rape. I teach women self-defense. I'm around rape survivors all the time.
Okay, so he doesn't like rape, but of course he has no objective moral standard against which to make that assessment other than it causes harm to people. I don't like harm. What happens if somebody says, well, they do like harm or they do like to rape? He can't use biology either as a reason for our morality, because if you go back into the animal population, you're going to notice that animals forcibly copulate to in survival, and they forcibly copulate to reproduce. So we have that happening all the time in this other kingdom, in the animal kingdom, and within humans, we're exceptional. We do believe that rape is wrong in every instance, and we have an objective moral standard for God to love each other and not to treat each other poorly and not to harm each other. We've got the golden rule that applies to everybody, but Robert doesn't have that, so he's just going to have to lean on his preferences here.
And you'll never guess what? I think rape fucking sucks. That's my preference. I don't see this being a really difficult conversation. You're right. That's my preference. I prefer women be able to go to the grocery store, to work, to the gym, hang out with friends, do whatever without being raped. That is my preference. The question is, do you have a problem with that?
Well, if I'm debating you about anti-theism, I don't have to grant that rape is wrong, right? I'm asking you for an argument for it.
I just gave you my argument because it sucks for the woman who's being raped.
See, Godless, pay attention to her. She's doing a pretty good job here.
Argument.
You're right. It's kind of a conclusion. I don't want the women in my life or anyone to be raped. That is why I teach them how to fight. You're right. That is my preference. And if you don't like it, or if anyone, I said this earlier on Twitter. Yes, it is my preference that we live in a rape-free world. That is my preference. Right. You don't have to agree. But if I catch someone violating somebody, boy, girl, man, woman, child, I'm going to stop them.
Right. So
I'm gonna
let's grant that theism entails everybody rapes everybody, right?
What?
Why? Let's
What?
Oh,
grant
that
for-
escalated quickly.
let's just grant for the sake of argument that theism entails everybody rapes everybody. That's not an argument against anti-theism. That's just saying you don't like rape. That's not an argument.
Wait. Say that again. That theist rape people or anti-theist rape people? What's your
Yeah.
argument?
This is
Let's
the
say-
defense against
let's say
anti-theism.
Let's say
So let's say, hold on. So let's say theist rape people. Now keep going.
let's say everybody who's a theist rapes everybody, right?
Okay.
That's not an argument against anti-theism. That's just saying you don't like rape.
Amy,
Can I
am I
ask
making
Godless?
sense? Am I? Why
Yes, I
why
think
are we
so.
10-minute argumentation on rape? Rape fucking sucks. That should be the end of the
Saying
sentence.
something
I don't get it.
Isn't an argument against it.
What's that?
So
You saying something sucks that you don't like something isn't an argument against it.
You're right. It's a conclusion. I think rape
Well,
is bad. Why is this a 10-minute conversation?
What is the inference?
That rape is bad.
Bad. What? Wait. Now, what does bad mean?
It's
That you don't
causing
like-
harm to somebody else.
You don't like it. Why is harming people? Why ought we not harm people?
Why don't we ask the person who just got raped? Let's ask her or him.
See, Robert doesn't have an answer here. This is why it's frustrating to listen to this. And this is something that Godless Girl actually pointed out. And I was trying to get her on my channel, but she didn't pay attention to my tweets. But anyway, one of the things that is going on right here is that Robert, the relativistic view, basically says that when people get together in a culture, their culture is going to decide whether something is right or wrong. And Robert's basically making the claim that every culture has made the decision with respect to rape. And Robert is right to an extent, except for places like the British Pitcairn Islands, where they routinely break in their 10-year-olds by essentially raping them, because that's what they do. And that's just something that's in their culture. Now, the relativist has no leg to stand on in judging them as incorrect, because that's acceptable within their society. And so we've got these problems with the relativist position. And so I'm going to go on, keep going on this little angle, and then we're going to go back to the beginning.
How they feel. I don't understand why this is such a difficult topic.
What's the
You're right.
difference?
And I said that at the beginning of this
Sure, please
debate.
calm down.
It is my
Calm down.
preference. It is my preference for people to be safe.
Yeah,
Do
but
you
why
disagree
should
with that?
why should other people?
You don't have to. That's just it. You don't have to.
You're just here to say you don't like anti-theism. You don't have any arguments against.
Godless, can I ask you, are you against rape?
Yeah, but I don't make the claim that it's morally wrong or that it's morally bad.
I do.
Wait.
Well, what's
ahead.
the
You
argument?
Wait.
You
You
make the
don't
claim
make the
rape is
claim
morally
that it's
wrong.
morally wrong?
What's
What
the
does bad
argument
mean
that-
without morally
What's the
wrong?
argument? What's the argument that rape is morally like?
Well,
You have
so
to-
I believe in biological morality. So the fact that you
This is almost humiliating. I mean, just as, come on, biological morality. Biological morality. She has not gone into the animal kingdom and noticed, for example, that gorillas kill their young. Sometimes they kill their offspring. That's biological morality. Sharks forcibly copulating. It's biological morality. Squirrels chasing other squirrels around and killing them. That's biological morality. There is nothing in the animal kingdom that says that they're held to any sort of moral standards. So speaking that the human population is under the same exact system that comes from our evolutionary processes is completely incorrect. Now, they have nothing to stand on except for what they're going to call consequentialism. So here's what the atheist argument tries to do. And I've heard this numerous times. If people say we do have objective moral standards, but they have no source for it, then what they're going to do is this little sneaky approach where they say, well, it's grounded in our consequence, our preferences, like our preferences against harm and our preferences to maximize well-being. However, grounding something in its consequence is like grounding the source in the outlet or the source in the outcome. That's circular reasoning. It's a problem to say that. And not only is it a problem for that reason, but what about people who don't support the particular consequence you endorse? So there are people out there that might get a lot of pleasure out of harming people. And so you can't speak to that population with this particular argument. So these guys have flawed arguments. Now, actually, Godless Girl is consistent with her view of atheism being a relative thing, and they're not liking that. They want to argue for objective morality, even though they have no foundation. Now, what is the foundation? If we can show we have objective morality and it pervades cultures, eras, and people, then then we have to have a source that pervades cultures, eras, and people. We do have a source that pervades cultures, eras, and people. We have a moral lawgiver, and that's why we have these, we hold certain truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally, that we're endowed by our creator, that we endorse life, liberty, justice, and many other universal moral values. And so we have an objective source against which we can judge, and that's God. And so really the atheist has a very difficult argument against this. So let's see what they say.
You are violating
making,
someone's
it's a
will.
you're making a moral proposition. What's your argument for
I
that?
am. My argument would be that you're violating their
She's going to
will.
say, why is that
and
bad? Watch. She's going to say, why is that bad?
Yeah. What's the argument that it's a moral proposition?
But that's what the basis of what
is a
things
moral
are bad.
proposition other than what you don't like? What's the difference between saying you don't like that and you don't like the flavor lemon?
Because the flavor lemon is like a personal truth.
It's a
but
preference.
you can...
I don't know what's meant by personal truth, but it's a preference. Just
and I also, and I actually don't actually
Hold on.
believe even in you liking lemon. I actually think that if we were to go back, if we were to clock the time, so let's take that example. Is
Hold on,
liking a
one sec.
lemon
I hate to interrupt.
subjective?
I just want to let you know, I'll give you a chance to respond, Amy.
Sure.
I want to say something. Thank you, Brian. I see your super chat. Steve McCrae did not show that that syllogism is fallacious. Steve McCrae tried to look at a different syllogism, but actually the one I just named, that's actually going back to William Lane Craig, who's a philosopher who's got a PhD in philosophy. And I think that I would probably go with William Lane Craig's idea than Steve McCrae's, because Steve McCrae is not a philosopher. So he did not show that that is logically incoherent. So if we have objective moral standards, God exists, essentially. So that's the bottom line. But anyway, I'm going to go back to a different portion of this video. We're going to start off and listen to what Robert and Amy's arguments are for anti-theism. And then we're going to hear also what Godless Girl has to say, and Gary.
100% of super chats that you send in today will be going to a good cause, namely COVID relief. And so we're going to be giving that to the American Red Cross as they are trying to help as much as they can right now in terms of getting masks to people, with medical workers, as well as many other things. So with that, very excited to let you know we're going to have the anti-theist side go first. They are on your left, so you're seeing Robert and Amy. They are a team, and then Gary and Godless Girl will be going second, and it's going to be 10 minutes split among each team. So with that, very excited to have you all. And one last thing before I hand it over to the speakers, I've linked them in the description, folks. So if you're listening and you're like, I want to hear more, I have included the links to their channels down below, so that way you can hear more. And with that, thrilled to have you all here. Thanks so much for joining us today. First, I'll just say hello. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
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 Excellent. And Robert, the floor is all yours.
Oh, thanks. My name's Robert Reed. I'm an atheist. Apparently, I'm also an anti-theist. I grew up a hardcore Christian. And
I know Robert Reed. He's been on my channel before, and I've known him for a while. He grew up a Christian and he became an atheist. And his major reason for coming to atheism, from my understanding, is that he doesn't like the way that some Christians treat the LGBT community. So let's go on.
And I was a fundamentalist, firm believer, six-day creation type of guy, on the street proselytizing, all the way up until about my 38th or my 39th birthday, before I just realized this isn't going to cut it for me. It just isn't. So that's kind of my story in terms of becoming an atheist. And as I do more and more research, and as I kind of look behind, the almost 4 decades.
But you see the problem with this whole idea. So just because some people are bad moral actors, or some people don't do things that are right, he's going to cite the Catholic Church here. And there are certainly some bad actors in the Catholic Church, and they certainly have not acted quickly enough to resolve the situations that they have. I still am upset with the Catholic Church for that myself. I left the Catholic Church for that reason. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because there's a few poor moral actors. That's not a logically responsible view. So let's see what he says.
Decade trail that I left behind as a religious person, that's what kind of turned on my anti-theism, in that you see some of the atrocities. And I'm not saying that is Christianity, because we're talking about Christianity today. That's not necessarily Christianity, but it gives it a pass. And I think about all the teachers that you see on the news that are having sex with students.
So here's his argument again: bad moral actors, therefore God doesn't exist. Doesn't follow.
We throw that person in jail. We call them a predator. They get locked away. They have their teaching credentials snatched out from underneath them. It's because they are following the law of the land. And I'll use an extreme example when I say the Catholic Church. Their priests do the exact same thing. And instead of jail time being, decertified as a priest or anything, they just get transferred to another parish where they're allowed to do this stuff over and over and over again. And there's several other examples to kind of support my position, but I'm anti-theist because of the damage that the institution of religion has to offer for the rest of us.
Okay, I just wanted to point out something that would be very interesting to people here in the crowd. If you guys want to go to read anything on what Christianity has brought to society, I highly recommend you read Alvin Schmidt's book. He's got a book that talks about Christianity and what it's brought to society, or go to Tom Holland, who was a former agnostic. Go and look at his book called Dominion. He can talk about what Christianity's brought to society in just a few little tidbits. One of the things that Christianity brought to society was the value for the poor. Back in the Roman Empire, at that time when Jesus came into the world, the poor were not valued. They were mistreated in many ways. They didn't have the same schooling. They didn't get the same hospitalization. They didn't get a lot of the same things. And women who were babies at that time often were left out to exposure when they were babies because people didn't value women as much. And so Jesus came in and he had women discovered the empty tomb. Arguably the most important discovery in the entire Bible was made by women. A woman was the first to hear that Jesus was going to come into this world. Mother Mary was the very first to hear. So you can see how Jesus elevated women throughout his ministry, and he also elevated the poor. And that changed perceptions for humanity on the value of people. That's one of the fundamental intrinsic things that we believe now. Our morality, we're getting closer to understanding the moral standard that God has for us. And God is the moral standard, essentially. And so the other thing that Christians have brought to the situation is they've brought schooling to the situation. They've brought this idea of fairness and property rights. They've brought this idea of humans are equally treated. It's not just the kings who get to be judged in a certain metric against how the paupers are judged. People are judged equally for various crimes. And so we have that kind of thing going on right now. And it's something that the Christians have brought to the world. And so Christianity's really made some good impacts on the world. And again, you can go to those books and have backup for that.
You got it. Thanks so much. We'll now kick it over to Amy, who will be giving the remainder, or I should say, who is welcome to use as much of the time that remains, which is a little bit less. It's about 8 minutes, 40 seconds. And thanks so much. Amy, glad to have you here. The floor is all yours.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. So for today's discussion, I'm going to be talking about anti-theism on trial, why theism is a superstition, and why we should work against superstitions.
She builds up a really amazing straw man herself on this idea of theism being a superstition, which is, of course, completely unsupported. In fact, I looked at the percentage of atheists in the world right now, and I think it was 2015, the last survey went out, and it was about 2% of people in the entire world are considered atheists. So this is a minority position right here. So she's taking on a minority position going against essentially the entire world.
So what is a superstition? Well, it's a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, trust in magic or chance, or a false conception of causation. Why are superstitions bad? Well, they're not based on evidence or other ways that can be verified. Information is often conveyed from holy text instead of testing, and sometimes they block us from finding the real answer by making us think that we already know the solution. Some common superstitions include a lucky rabbit's foot, giving us good luck, breaking a mirror, giving us bad luck, and knocking on wood, preventing injury. So what exactly is theism? Well, it's a belief that there is a conscious creator of the universe. Why should we be against theism? Well, there's currently no good evidence that such a being exists or could exist. There's also no reason for them to have cells, thus no reason for them to be conscious.
Consciousness makes a very good argument also for theism, because you have to think to yourself, mind before matter. We always have mind comes before matter in every instance. And so before the universe, so I'll go to another syllogism since Brian Stevens likes syllogism so much. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. The cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Therefore, God. And so that's a little syllogism from William Lane Craig that I know Brian will not like, but it's the truth. So here's the idea with consciousness and speaking to the formation of the universe had to be some sort of intentional, conscious being that basically put into us the ability to be conscious and be aware of our surroundings. So here we go.
Also, the micro claims are quite silly. Moses with talking bushes, Jesus walking on water, Muhammad flying over the moon.
I don't think those are, I think Muhammad flying over the moon is silly. I wouldn't say that Jesus walking on water is silly. We have evidence for the resurrection. You guys consider what going back to Christianity and looking at the evidence and being responsible about what you find with that. So what we have are just some basic facts that are external to the Bible coming from people who are even hostile towards Christians. So we've got people like Tacitus talking about how Christians were rounded up and slaughtered under Nero for his entertainment. They were burned, they were torched, they were crucified. We also have evidence outside of the Bible that Peter, well, we have evidence, here's a story. So we've got Peter denied Jesus 3 times. We have Paul, who was busy persecuting Christians, and we have James, Jesus's half-brother, who tried to stop his ministry. And so we've got these 3 people. Suddenly, boom, they see Jesus over a period of 40 days in multiple places with multiple people over, again, 40 days. And so then they decided that they were going to preach for him until the very ends of their lives, which ended in martyrdoms. And so why didn't they recant? They certainly didn't have any sort of material benefits for doing this. And we have to look at what they said. They said they saw the risen Christ, and they saw him over a period of 40 days. And so we've got a very good case for Christianity in that, but we also have a good case in looking at people today who are investigating the truth. When you start really looking into Christianity and you ask God for the answers, God will respond when you're ready. Okay. It did take a while for me. It took me about 20 years to really get to it. I was at a point where I was a very weak Christian who wasn't sure about the resurrection, but I also was this person who wasn't even looking into it. Okay. Then I found myself on a plane sitting next to a pastor after I prayed for an answer. And the pastor told me to read this book. Mere Christianity is in this book. It also has The Great Divorce and Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Highly recommend it, because there's a little trilemma here that basically says, a man who is merely a man would not say the sort of things that Jesus said. He would either be a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord. So you must make your choice. So that little statement right there, it's almost like the Holy Spirit opened my eyes when I read it. I was just amazed. So I bought copies of this book for everybody in my family. They all didn't come to Christianity because of that. My brother is still an agnostic, so I'm still working on him, but we shall see. Okay, so here we go. And I want to say hi to the people in the chat. I've got Brian, Brian is just very busy today. Ronan and Nathan. Yeah, Brian, you can hear Godless Girl. She's going to talk about what she thinks about the cosmological argument as well. So let's go.
Meaning that theism is a superstition. So what are the most popular religions? Well, Christianity's clocking in at about 29% with 2.3 billion. We got Islam coming in at 24% with 1.9 billion, and Hinduism coming in 3rd place with 14% at 1.1 billion. So the interesting thing is the non-religious are actually tied for 3rd.
Okay, I'm going to stop for that in just a second. Spacebar Apologetics, thank you for the super chat. It says, thanks for your review. Do you know any apologist that argues for slavery? Example, slavery is a necessary evil for the broken society. No, I actually don't know people who would argue for slavery. I don't think it was a necessary evil, but I do think it was something that was an economic necessity back in the ancient times. You guys have to remember, we're living in modern times where we've got a very wealthy group of people. The middle class is doing extremely well in the world, and it wasn't like this before 1800. There were huge dichotomies between the rich and the poor prior to 1800, and people lived on the equivalent of about $1 a day. Okay, so the situation that we have right now is a direct product of things like capitalism. I'm going off on a tangent, but please don't let anybody try to convince you that Marxism in any light is correct or decent, because it's horrible. It led to the deaths of 120 million people last century. So please don't ever go to that. I'm sorry, definitely on a tangent, but here we go. Now, I also want to note something. She's got this group of what she calls non-religious. 14%. My parents are non-religious. They're theists. Just because you don't aspire to a particular church or you don't go to a synagogue or whatever it is, doesn't mean that you don't believe in God. So the percentage of people that are in that group, the sort of apathetic or whatever you want to call them, including the atheists, which is a small percent. In the United States, in fact, the atheism has been on the rise. So it's something that we do need to address here in the United States. In fact, the percentage of atheists is now at about 3.1%, and the percentage of agnostics is around 4%. And so that's 7% of people who don't believe God exists or don't know if God exists, and so or don't think they can possibly know whether or not God exists. Now, you can know that if you just open your mind. Okay, so here we go.
And Buddhism ends up coming in at 4th, and we lodge everyone else in at the 13.
Oh, this one's not Godless Girl. Godless Girl is, this is Amy we're listening to. So Amy is on the anti-theist position.
In other words, Christianity is the world's most popular religion, Islam is the fastest growing religion, and Hinduism is the most popular Eastern religion.
And this is true.
So what's the game plan?
Let's note a little something that's distinction about Christianity that people should know. Okay, Christianity was written over a period of 1,500 years by 40 or more Bible authors in 3 languages and across 3 continents. This is unlike the Muslim faith, which was written by one man in one generation and is still primarily located at its epicenter where it began. Okay, this is not like the Hindu faith either. The Hindu faith was written over a period of time, but the Hindus believe in thousands of gods, it might even be more than that, and they also believe in reincarnation, into sentient beings, and so do the Buddhists. So they believe that when they die, they're going to be reincarnated in sort of their caste system, according to, I mean, they don't believe in the caste system, they don't endorse it, but they all know which caste they're in. They believe they'll be reincarnated, and if they did a terrible job on this planet, they might get reincarnated into a cow, okay, or some other animal. And that's the Hindu belief. That's one of the reasons for the sacred cow. So these are different beliefs than we have here in the Western societies. Christianity is not located where, primarily located where it began, around Jerusalem. So it's kind of an interesting thing that it is so special of a book. And the other thing, just to mention, in case you don't know, Jesus fulfilled over 330 prophecies in the Old Testament, such as Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, Zechariah 12:10. So please take a look at those passages. You'll be amazed when you read them.
Well, first of all, I think Europeans and a lot of us Americans, we get a little bit too focused on which religion is the worst when they all are. Instead, we need to actively proselytize skepticism, reason, and critical thinking.
I encourage skepticism, reason, and critical thinking, because when you really think about our origins, meaning, morality, and destiny, you're going to come to Christianity. Atheism has no explanation for these great aspects of our lives, these true aspects of meaning and truth, and why we all do seek truth, for example.
Especially in the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa. Aren't we imposing our morals? Well, no, we're not. We are correct to call it.
I almost want to zoom ahead of this because, of course, we don't support female genital mutilation and this idea of the circumcision. They're going to spend a little time on this today. I'm not going to probably get to that part of the thing, but anyway, so.
About child pedophilia rings. We are correct to be against girls' genital mutilation. We are correct to be against boy genital mutilation.
And I would also add, we are correct to be against puberty blockers, okay? I don't think puberty blockers are a good idea for a parent to allow a child to get. I think that that's actually doing something that could be extremely harmful in the future of that child. And so I have some evidence that I've seen on that. So I just want to add that.
But the proper etiquette, of course, is that we must love our theist brothers and sisters. They are victims of superstition. They are not our enemies.
Coming from the 3%. Oops, sorry.
We must win them over as family via debate and discussion. In conclusion, I believe that non-theists who are looking to make a difference should be anti-theists.
I see Nathan asked about pro-circumcision. I just want to add that, yes, I'm definitely much in support of circumcision. Robert's actually going to explain one of the things in the U.S. society. It's extremely prevalent, and it's something that he said would be embarrassing in the locker room if you were uncircumcised. Robert said that in this particular conversation. So just want to point that out.
Not because we hate theists, but because of the negative worldwide impact of theism. By acting as skeptic ambassadors, we can make this planet just a tiny bit more rational. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks so much. Appreciate that opening statement from Amy. We will now switch it over where we are going to hear from the, you could say, anti-theists, the people who would say, I don't know if it does do more harm than good. So thanks so much for our guests on both sides. And Amy, once you're ready to unshare, I'll switch us.
Brian Stevens, thank you for the super chat. Any comment on Cameron mocking Amy? I don't know. Did I see Cameron mocking Amy? We don't want to mock you guys. Try to be nice. It's we want to do that. So
Back into the dialogue boxes.
Oh,
No
there you
problem
go.
if it's no problemo. And with that, thanks so much to Gary Hall and Godless Girl, who will be going next.
Yeah, so as far as what Robert said about religious organizations, you can be anti-organized religion and still be a theist. Anti-theism isn't anti-organized religion. So you could be against the Catholic Church and still be a theist. Like we have secular organizations that do things like Doctors Without Borders is a secular organization, but most of them believe in God. So being anti-theist doesn't, the examples we do have of anti-theist organizations is things like American atheists who aren't concerned with like maximizing well-being and minimize suffering. What they're concerned with is spending millions of dollars taking cases all the way up to the Supreme Court because they're upset that some Christian put a cross on government property. And Amy talking about the superstition. Look, people are
she actually, this girl, I'll let you guys know. So I did a little investigation on who Godless Girl is after watching this, because I thought I really liked this part of it, and I'm going to play it in just a second, but I just wanted to point out, she has 2 YouTube channels, and on her YouTube channel, she spends a ton of time going after people like Darth Dawkins, but also she spends a lot of time going after her fellow atheists. She's actually made videos about Shannon Q and said things about David Silverman, who's American atheist former president. And so it's pretty interesting. Man trying to be a woman, Brian says. Many are saying this. I don't see, for me personally, I feel like if someone wants to make a decision as an adult, what they want to do about their bodies, that's between them and their maker. But as a child, I've got that problem. As a child, a parent, I think, should not be allowing a child to get puberty blockers, say at the age of 10, because I don't think a child has the brain capacity to really be able to think through the impact of that ultimately. So I think that's a terrible idea that a parent would let a child do that. And apparently that's on the rise. So you can actually go into places like England and see that sort of thing is on the rise. Now that to me is child abuse.
Superstitious because they're irrational. Their irrational actions aren't caused by the superstition themselves. Just because you drop a superstition doesn't mean that you then become rational. I'd rather, like Amy on here said that she told Canadian Catholic and Tom Jump on Modern Day Debate that she had solved the hard problem of consciousness. Okay, just because you're an atheist, you don't suddenly become rational. Like the idea of somebody that categorically delusional like that, like implementing social policies or something, is disturbing. And all this anti-theism stuff.
I also want to say she actually does, this Godless Girl, on her videos. She actually goes and she goes into places like Walgreens and McDonald's, and she just totally tears apart the people who are working there, which is completely wrong that she does that. But that's what Godless Girl does. She's kind of a character. I just have to say.
It's just all going to boil down to a moral claim, which the atheist has no ground to stand on. It's going to be all just what they don't like. It's all going to boil down to what they don't like, right? They're going to have nothing to offer today except to whine and bitch like the atheists do. I'm an atheist myself, but I'm anti-militant atheist because I see more dishonesty in the great debate community coming from the atheist side than the theist side. And it's just all going to come down to, I could grant that belief in theism, say everybody, if they believe in a deity, is going to start burning puppies with cigarettes. I could grant that, but the atheist, that doesn't entail that the atheist can make any claim about the way the world ought be. What's going to be their justification for we ought not live in a world where theists burn puppies with cigarettes, so we should be anti-theist? It's just going to boil down to their preference, and it's just going to boil down to it's what they don't like. Go ahead, Gary.
I don't know how to follow that. My main problem is not just with anti-theism, but it's with anti-atheism as well, because to me, it tries to boil down complex problems within society to one thing: to it is a religion's fault, or it is a systemic belief in a god that is causing problem X or problem Y. Because my position is that it's a people problem.
This is what cracks me up with Amy, with I mean, godless girl too. She's it looks like she might be smoking pot, but she's like blowing it out of her nose. And this just looks funny.
You're going to get bad people, you're going to get good people. The bad people, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be sport, it could be politics, it could be good ownership, it could be whatever. Will do bad things because that's the sort of people they are. Now, some of the things that Robert brought up, I thought were interesting because, again, the things that I'm against. I'm against child pedophilia. I'm against, people being hurt. But the thing is, that's not unique to religion. There is a lot of that in the secular community. Like, I can name names I'm not going to here that have been accused of doing bad things, and it's not their fault. It's BT's fault or whatever. And I think, thing is that we want to be fair, which is that, again, it's on those unique people.
So the pros, Susan Slamoran, is the pros are basically saying they're against anti-theism. So it's like pro-theism in a way.
The problem is religion on its own a harmful thing? No, because it can have a societal aspect that people can get into a close community and be close to each other. But also it gives people, something to focus on, like a good moral, backbone and stuff like that. The problem is.
So if we want to look at the secular utility of religion, I can mention a few studies here. So we have Dervick and colleagues in 2004 compared depressed inpatients, finding that the religiously unaffiliated had significantly more lifetime suicide attempts and more first-degree relatives who had committed suicide than subjects who endorsed a religious affiliation. The religious affiliated further had greater moral objections to suicide and lower aggression levels. Other studies have concluded that personal aspects of religiosity relate to intrinsic motivations and belief, and religious identity corresponds to higher levels of subjective or psychological well-being. That's from Greenfield Marks, Pargament, and Green and Elliott. Lawrencell, I got a bunch of people here. Intrinsic religious motivation further corresponds to a sense of purpose and satisfaction with life, according to Bird and colleagues in 2007. And so we've got some good support, and I've got many more studies. I've got a bunch of even meta-analytic studies on my YouTube, on my blog channel, and I've also got it detailed here. But in a meta-analysis of 147 independent studies, findings indicated religiosity is associated positively with psychological well-being, according to Smith, McCullough, and Pohl in 2003. Findings further indicated positive religious coping, positive God concepts, and intrinsic religious motivation were negatively associated with depressive symptoms. Now, intrinsic and extrinsic religiosity have to be separated. Intrinsic is the idea that you're religious because you have a relationship with God, and that's the one that has a lot of positive outcomes. Extrinsic religiosity is kind of like you're using religion for what it can do for you, and that's like the churchgoer who goes just for the community. They're not really there because they have a relationship with God. They have shown some negative outcomes of just extrinsic religiosity, but they've always shown really great outcomes for people who have high levels of intrinsic religiosity. It's good to have a positive relationship with God, because if you have to go through hard times, you have that hope. If you lose a loved one, you know that you're going to be seeing them in heaven eventually. And so that there's that hope there that's so important. And this is one of the reasons why we don't want to get rid of religion here in the world. Even if it's not the religion you endorse yourself, religion has been a net benefit for society.
This is that there are people who take it too far, but there are people who take sports too far. There are people who take your good ownership too far. Are those things bad? I don't necessarily think so. Again, it's not necessarily the belief itself or the action. It's what you do with it that I think is harmful.
You got it. Thanks so much for all of the opening statements from each side. So we are going to go into discussion mode now. Thanks so much. And as a reminder, all Super Chats going to COVID relief today. And so we do thank our speakers for being here, helping make that possible. And we also thank you for hanging out, even if maybe you're in a country where it doesn't have the software to give a super chat, or maybe you're just in a spot where you're like, it's hard to give a super chat right now. Just want to let you know, just by being here at the channel, supporting it, by just watching and engaging, like saying hi in the live chat, that is just already a huge help to us, and we appreciate you being here. So with that, we will go into the open discussion. Whoever would like to lead first, feel free.
Godless made a lot of points, and I wanted to see if I can remember them all. You're absolutely right. Becoming an atheist does not make you more rational just because. It doesn't make you smarter. There is no, right? I think there's 3 of us here that are atheists. I don't remember getting my atheist encyclopedia when I became an atheist, right? So you're right. It doesn't make you more rational.
You know, I've been thinking a lot about this atheist and agnostic thing, and I think, you know, I read a lot on in fact, there's a what's it called? Oh shoot, it's in the Catholic Bible, but it's not in the Protestant Bible. Oh, the Wisdom of Sirach. The Wisdom of Sirach says the first step to denying God is to have elevated levels of pride, and so pride is the big problem. And in our books, in the Psalms and everything, it says pride leads to a fall. And so it does take a certain level of pride to not fear God, not fear our creator. And so it's kind of a dangerous thing. So if you're in that camp, and I know people in the chat are in that camp, just look into yourself. Why don't you want to align yourself with your creator? Just think about that.
And to piggyback off of what Amy was saying in terms of, the superstition, worldviews that have a foundation in reality, more times than not, yield better results. I think I'm even stealing that quote from somebody. And so when an atheist screws up, it's on that atheist, right? Hopefully it's a learning experience. From what I can tell, and again, nothing, at least from my point of view, is 100% across the board. Again, let's just stick with the pedophilia ring. They get the pass because they have a foundation that is not founded in reality. They will get forgiven, they'll go to another parish, and they'll continue to do what they do. In the secular world, the rules are different. So when we strip away the superstition, which I think is a great way to put it, you can kind of start to operate.
Yeah, let's not pick on Amy. I think the better solution to this particular issue, whether or not what her biology is just to really pray for her. That's the better solution.
In the real world.
And I wanted to ask Godless, don't you think that your beliefs have repercussions, that people act on their beliefs, that beliefs aren't just isolated things?
That people act on their beliefs?
Yes.
Yeah, how is that relevant?
Very
well.
relevant.
Because it means they are acting on superstitious beliefs. Wouldn't it be better for people to have less superstitious beliefs?
Again, when she goes back to superstition, it's really putting Christians or even theists sort of in this really negative light. And it's not looking at the fact that Christianity fully answers the problem of suffering in the world. Christianity tells us to bear our own crosses. That's unique. Christianity has a role model that we see. If someone says we don't have evidence for God, well, God brought his only son down here and provided a role model for how we should be living our lives. He carried his cross and we have to carry our crosses. And so Christianity tells us why no one is perfect. Everybody falls short of the glory of God. And one of the reasons why Jesus did what he did is if you go back to the book of Exodus, you can see this whole pattern play out. So in the book of Exodus, on Nisan 10, people would choose the lamb. They would choose the Passover lamb. Now, Jesus presented himself on Nisan 10 as the Passover lamb when he went through Jerusalem on the donkey and was finally recognized as our Lord and Savior. And then on Nisan 14 is the day in the book of Exodus that the Passover lamb was sacrificed. And on Nisan 14 in the New Testament, which ended up being April 3rd of the year 33, Nisan 14, we have Jesus being crucified. And of course, he rose again after 3 days. And he's the only one who is in the position to be able to be sacrificed for the sins of the world. One of the reasons that Jesus called out to God, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? For 2 reasons. One is he wanted to draw our attention to the parallel verse in Psalm 22. But another reason he did that was because he had taken on the sin of the world. And so God was not with him at that point because God cannot be with sin. And so that's why he called him God rather than call him my father, Abba, which is the way he had referred to him just prior to that when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. So just go back and look at that kind of stuff. It's really interesting.
Yeah, but acting on, like, you're saying as an alternative, we should act on atheism. What does that mean?
Wouldn't it be better if the Muslim bombers didn't believe in Islam?
wouldn't it be better if North Korea were Christian rather than
No.
atheist?
No.
Oh,
Wait, North Korea.
You'd rather live in North Korea than America?
Well, first of all, that's a false dichotomy. I don't consider America a Christian nation. So it's like a secular nation or North Korea. It's like I'd rather live in the secular nation.
Secular, but most of them believe in God. Being
Wait,
secular is irrelevant.
Well, yes, most of the lay people in this country
We're not
currently
talking about
believe in Christianity.
Let's just talk about, in case you don't know where the atheists are in the world right now, a big part of the population of China is atheistic. Okay, and that's because the government of China is communist atheists, and they have been discriminating against religious people over decades. They've been doing that quite a bit in China. So I would pray for people living in China because it's one of the worst places probably to live. And if you read Francis Fukuyama, I highly recommend going and reading Francis Fukuyama. You can see how non-Christian foundations have changed communities. And you have places like China where individuals don't have rights. Individuals aren't recognized. It's one of the highest levels of in-group collectivism in the world. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have high levels of in-group collectivism, you don't necessarily value individuals. People can't speak out against their government in China. Okay, you could be arrested the next day for posting something like people do with Trump on Twitter all the time. Okay, and then another really highly secular society is Sweden, and that's of course the one that Robert's going to talk about probably if you want to talk about that. But that's starting to play out in some negative ways over in Sweden. And I have firsthand information of that with one of my former graduate assistants on some of the negative things that go on with respect to some of people's rights. And they have very high levels of institutional collectivism in Sweden, which is why you see a lot of social safety nets and social programs. And those have sort of taken the place of the churches. Okay, and so where else do we have really high levels of atheism, relatively speaking? What's the other one? I want to say it's Romania. I'll double check on that. But of course, we also have the foundations of USSR were built on Marxism, okay? And also the leaders, Stalin and others, were atheists who were actively targeting the churches. We've got information of that coming from our government that's given us a lot of support for that. I'm not making that up. We also have China, again, Maoist China also led to the deaths of many people. And of course, Cambodia with Pol Pot, we've got a lot of, we had atheist governments there. And so, of course, I think Godless Girl was very good in pointing out North Korea, but there are other examples of places where atheism has thrived and it has not served individuals very well.
We're not talking about anti-religion, we're talking about anti-theism. And
well, that is I'm anti-theism because I want them to stop believing their religion because I think it's a superstition.
God.
What?
Most Americans believe in God.
Currently, but we're working on that. We're lowering the number.
How is that relevant?
Because we're winning. Eventually there's not going to be theists in this country.
Yeah, where it's all atheist, or would you rather live somewhere else in the world where they're most of them believe in God?
I think that's a false dichotomy because in North Korea they have to worship their leader. I don't worship the government. See, I don't worship the government and I don't worship a God.
You define deity as the creator of the universe. They don't believe
a conscious creator of the universe. No, they believe that you better listen to what I say or we're going to put bullets in your head. It's actually very motivating.
That's a very nice thing for, I just want to point out, a very nice thing that I just saw from, who was that? From Jason. In fact, let me just do something with Jason. Jason is the person who convinced me to start this YouTube channel. So I got to give kudos to Jason. Thank you so much, Jason. I just had a blog at one point just going and he basically said, why don't I start a YouTube channel? And started really small a few years ago. It's still pretty small compared to a lot of other people's channels, but I'm slowly but surely trying to increase subscribers and try to put out some good content. So I hope you guys like that.
I asked you, why are you an atheist? And your answer is because
multiple reasons. One of the reasons is there's no evidence, but I actually, because of my theories on consciousness.
I want to say something really quickly before I forget this. Mind Onion says, no one argues you can't be moral without being atheist. Yeah, I would never go out there and try to say, hey, because you're an atheist, therefore you're not moral. That's not fair. So you've got to look at people's other views and what they hold. One of the things that Robert is probably going to say if he learned or listened to this video is he's going to probably say something about Russia, people not being humanists. And he considers himself a humanist and humanism providing his values. But humanism basically has sort of stolen the values of Christians. So humanists are trying to basically have their cake and eat it too. They want to take the Christian values, but they don't want Christianity involved, okay? And just again, look at the foundations of Western societies with individualism, rights, property rights. All people are valued. Women are treated very well. Okay, if you go to Japan, just to give another example of a society where women, Japan has the highest levels of what they call masculinity. That's what Hofstede called it. But what it really is gender inegalitarianism. And so you see very few women in high level positions in companies unless they're foreigners, essentially. So if you're coming in from a different country, you might be able to get that. But that was something that Japan ranked really high on. Look at the idea of Saudi Arabia. They finally a couple of years ago decided to let women start driving cars. Okay, women could barely work because they had to be driven. And then there's some other societies around the world where a woman cannot go outside or be in the streets walking with a man because that's going to be scorned upon and sometimes even persecuted. So there's some pretty crazy things going on in other parts of the world that don't have our Western foundations.
I actually think that it's silly. I don't understand why a floating consciousness is doing anything. I don't understand why it exists. I don't understand why it would be there.
You don't know why consciousness exists, therefore God.
I know why consciousness exists. I don't know why God would have a consciousness.
You know why consciousness exists?
Because I study it. I mean, it's
that was just really funny. Why consciousness is issues because I study it. It's like this is a guy should really. Sorry, I can't help chuckle.
I'd love to hear this. How do you know?
What would you like to know about consciousness? That's a better question. Why does consciousness exist? Because it's a rival to plants and fungi. Plants and fungi have a defensive mechanism. They don't need consciousness. We need to actually walk on the macro.
So her argument is that we need conscience, therefore we have conscience. Okay, got it.
Landscape. So our body needed a consciousness. It is the way that your body walks, gathers food, gathers energy, gets rid of the energy, and multiplies.
I don't understand how you even know that plants aren't conscious.
What do you think plants are conscious?
I don't know.
Generally speaking, they do not collect sensory data the same way we do. They don't walk around. They don't have any reason to have a conscience. They may have. So there may be things that
the argument is if you have a reason to have a conscience, therefore you have a conscience. And the thing about consciousness that is interesting, there's two things, conscience and consciousness. And the interesting thing is scientists like biologists haven't figured out how people came to be aware of their surroundings, how this all happened in the evolutionary process. They haven't been able to address that. Evolution doesn't give us that answer. And so another thing that is interesting is how humans have this conscience. You know, how do we have a conscience that tells us that rape is wrong? It's inside of us. How do we get upset? It's because God planted a conscience inside of us, and it says that in Romans 2:15. And also, just even look at our DNA. If you guys have any doubts, look at our DNA. We have 3.5 what they call letters. They're 4 nucleic acids, basically, that have been well ordered. Okay, you wouldn't look at an alphabet and you wouldn't look at a book and think that nobody authored it or there's no coder of the DNA code. So why would you think that our bodies were just put together out of randomness?
Conscious, like their plants may actually scream. They may actually emit a high energy frequency when you cut them, which is cool. And it may be similar to like conscious traits, but to say that we are conscious as the same way as plants are.
So we do have to go back. I hate to interrupt, but just to return to anti-theism and kind of the societal consequences, though I do find this interesting, and I'm being very serious about that. Maybe on another time we can host it, but just to kind of bring us back to the main topic for today.
Yeah, I don't think that we don't know what the world would look like as an atheistic world would look like. We'll have the example of North Korea, but we don't have any societies that are atheistic. So we don't know. I mean,
that's actually not true. We do have societies to where the majority of the landscape is atheist. And I think
Nathan, I just want to point out, as far as the letters, DNA letters, A, G, C, and T, those are obviously they're representatives, just like letters are representatives. Okay, so even our alphabet is a representative. It's symbolic of meaning. Okay, and same with DNA. DNA symbols have meaning, and they're all put together in a very intricate way. And so it's just, I think that trying to say that there's no coder is not a very logical position to take.
At least I'll clear it up for myself, and Amy can, jump in if she has a disagreement with what I'm getting ready to say. And I've heard this from like Christian apologists in terms of where we talk about an atheistic worldview or an atheistic there's no such thing. Atheism is simply a response to a single claim. Do you believe in any gods? The answer is no. Everything else is everything else. And you're right, you can't hang your hat on atheism to tell people how to treat others. That's why my worldview over here is humanism. My atheism does not tell you whether I'm tall or short, whether I vote Republican or Democrat, whether I like cake.
I'm gonna have to disagree with him. Actually, his atheism does tell what he's going to vote, because I've looked at the I've looked at the I've looked at the demographic information about atheists, and they tend to be younger. They tend to be in their 30s. They tend to be male. And they tend to be liberal or Democrat. So they're more likely to be a Democratic atheist and a liberal atheist who endorses things like abortion. Then you have, or abortion rights, I should say. I don't want to straw man them. I want to say that they tend to do that kind of thing. They tend to also support things like euthanasia. So we see places in Northern Europe, like in the Netherlands, for example, where they're giving a lot of, making it very easy for people to have doctors put them out of their misery at the end of their lives if they want to end their lives at that point. And so that's something that Christians tend to be against. And so we do send that kind of thing. What's the interesting thing as far as abortion, I'm just going to mention this really quickly, is this idea that it's basically essentially taking the innocent, the lives of the innocent. The mother takes the lives of an innocent baby, and they're in support of that. But then a lot of them are against the death penalty. So you've got someone who's guilty, who should be tried, and maybe killed millions, or not millions, maybe killed a lot of people. Well, we do have some who did kill millions, like Hitler and that kind of thing. But as far as the death penalty, so they'll be for an abortion, and they'll be against the death penalty. That is sort of counter what it should be. That's not aligning correctly.
Versus pie.
So humanism.
What's that?
Let's take humanism. So why ought we be humanists? How is it going to boil down to anything except you making a moral claim, which is going to be what your preference is?
You're right, and it is my preference. And here's the thing: I bet you dollars to donuts.
I want to know what are you saying other than you don't like non-humanism. What are you saying other than that?
I did not say that. I actually didn't say that at all. You're right. It is my preference. It is my preference that if my next door neighbor needs help, I'm going to help my next door neighbor. You don't have to. I'm not saying I've got the ultimate morality. I'm not even saying I'm right. But my preference is to be a nice person versus being a jerk. So my atheism says nothing about who I am as a person. So, I mean, if we can just kind of put that one in the trash can, that'd be great. Because you're right. You can't hang your hat on atheism. It's simply a response to a claim.
You guys are supposed to be justifying a claim about the way the world ought be. I want to know what your justification for that is, other than your preference.
I think, Amy,
subjectivity.
Justification for that claim other than what your preference is, which isn't a justification.
But it's all preference. It is all preference.
You're just saying you don't like it. You're on here to debate. You're on here to say you don't like theism with no arguments.
And I don't believe in subjectivity. I think they're wrong because they don't have evidence. So it's not subjective. I don't believe in subjectivity. I don't believe in relative. Well, I believe in general relativity. I don't believe in, I'm not a moral relativist, none of that stuff.
But Godless, you're giving your preference and your opinions as well. That's all any of us have are preferences and opinions.
You see how this situation is pretty flawed, and it's one of the big problems. Like, for example, if you go in certain societies near Brazil, you've got people who are cannibals, okay? And it's one of the ways that they are cannibals and how they sear their consciences is they try to pretend that people whom they cannibalize are lesser than humans. And that's something that we typically see in people who are doing something wrong to humans that we innately know we're hardwired against that kind of activity. And so under this whole preferences idea, Robert has absolutely no legs to stand on in saying that people in these other societies are doing something that's morally wrong because he doesn't have a foundation for morality. Other than his preferences, okay? His preferences could be different from the cannibal's preferences.
But what did I?
Am I right?
The only preference I've said is I pointed out I'd rather live under a Christian theocracy than atheistic North Korea.
Godless, can I ask why you don't believe in a God?
Yeah.
Do we really? I mean, I can get into that, but I don't.
This is going to be interesting when she says her logic for this, and then I just keep watching.
Definitely not going to be for the same reasons yours is, but I don't think that's relevant.
Try us.
Maybe.
I'm actually kind of curious.
Test us.
Of why I don't believe in a God?
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to be the atheist saying, "Oh, there's no evidence for God," or "Oh, Richard Dawkins," or
Stop treating us like social justice warriors. Just answer the question.
So we don't go too far off the subject. And one also, I don't want to be too controlling of where the conversation goes, but I also, we haven't heard a ton from Gary yet, so I do actually.
It's because they've been talking to Godless, and I didn't want to interrupt because that would be rude.
All right, go ahead.
No, it's fine because they're asking you a specific question, and I mean, like, and again, if you want to answer, that's up to you. Again, like, because again, I can't answer the reasons why you're a non-believer. To if you want to do that to them, that's fine. But then, if you don't mind me jumping in after that, that's perfectly fine. I'll give you the floor to answer their question.
Okay, you guys want me to answer why I don't believe in God?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, I think it's going to be a conceptual issue with a being creating the world, creating the Big Bang, which is when time started, when it doesn't make any sense to say that God created time, because then God would have had to existed prior to time.
So her big argument here is on time. Now, notice this is her argument. I want to make a point here, though. Even people like Stephen Hawking realize that the universe is structured in a way where we did have a start date. We estimate somewhere around 14 billion years ago that the universe had a start date, and so this idea of space, time, and matter all coming into being at one point goes back to this inflation of essentially, and so they've traced that back by looking at different patterns in the universe. Now, the reason that one thing Stephen Hawking said about this is what he calls imaginary time. He realized there had to be something prior to this to have this whole thing occur, and he figured that the time might not be measured in a linear way. So we view time in a linear way. Okay, so that's the bottom line. Now, God, under Christianity, here's what we believe. We believe that God is both transcendent to the universe, meaning he's outside of time and he's outside of space and outside of matter, and he's immanent inside the universe. Muslims believe that their Allah is transcendent, however, not immanent. Pantheists believe that gods are immanent, created in this universe, and not eternal. And so you have different sort of belief systems, but not transcendent. In fact, pantheists, one of the beliefs that people have in Eastern faiths is in their holy books is that the universe is recycling. It's in a constant state of recycling. And so it basically is saying an eternal universe. And that is inconsistent with what science has found. And it's interesting, Christianity is very consistent with what science has found, because we say that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earths, okay, and the earth, I should say.
Which is just incoherent. It's just gibberish.
So she doesn't believe, again, that God could exist outside of time. She thinks that's gibberish. Now listen to how they go about reconstructing her views.
I couldn't agree with you more.
What?
I could not agree with you more.
I understood what I said. I doubt you could restate it back to me.
So you just stated that it doesn't make sense that a being would start the inflation event, right?
Why?
Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah, I'm asking you why. I gave my
why? Because an inflation event is a thing of gravity, and generally speaking.
No.
What do you mean no? It's not.
Well,
it's not repulsive gravity.
Had nothing to do with gravity. We could be saying God created a world with no gravity. In
no, I'm telling you, the inflation event it doesn't matter. It's a repulsive gravity event. It's but
I don't see how gravity is relevant to my objection.
I know you don't, but that's okay.
You're talking about a universe with no gravity. How would that my objection would still apply?
Sure.
How is gravity?
But I'm saying it's a force of nature, and beings are normally high-level things that take billions of years to get here, at least from what we know.
No, that's not anything like I said.
Well, no. I'm adding on. I already said what you said.
Yeah.
I'm now adding.
Originally, and what you added on was all irrelevant to my claim. But
didn't I just say what you said?
No, you started talking about gravity. You started talking about inflation.
Well, no, because I talked about that's what and Sean Carroll believes that it was repulsive.
What Sean Carroll believes?
I know you. Okay. Well, he's a physicist.
So what?
I don't know. I was just trying to repeat what you said. And then I just.
Godless? I said, it doesn't seem like you're a real big fan of atheists.
No, I hate atheists.
But you are one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to what's your problem with us? And by us, I mean 1, 2, 3 atheists.
The cognitive dissonance that I see you guys have in debates.
Okay. Then let's go with the cognitive dissonance. What do you mean by that?
Like Christians, and you'll walk away cheering like you're a champion or something when you get walked over by theists all the time. Theists win the majority of debates against atheists.
Okay. If that's the case, why are you not a Christian?
I just gave my reason, which you guys just totally went over your head. I just gave one of my reasons for not.
Okay, because you're really coming off with an attitude, and I don't think that's necessary. You say you're one of us, but you're dumping on us. And you can sit there and say that about both sides. Hold on, Godless. You can say that about both sides. When William Lane Craig debates an atheist, this is what's going to happen. Everyone who went into that auditorium rooting for William Lane Craig is going to say he dog walked the atheist. Every atheist that walks in is going to say the exact same thing.
I used to be one of you.
What's that?
I used to be one of you, which
and now what?
Which I think contributes to my disdain for stupid atheists, because I used to be one of them. And
okay, then what's your...
See what she just did? She just called him a stupid atheist, essentially. And in saying that she was a stupid atheist. I mean, this is just, she is comedy gold, really. But I'm not saying that atheists, I've met plenty of very smart atheists, so this is not saying that atheists are stupid, but some of the positions are moral, are logically incoherent, like this idea that atheists can have objective morality.
Definition of a stupid atheist. What is your definition of a stupid atheist?
I want to give Robert and Amy a chance to defend themselves, and then
Okay.
I do think we have to go back into the question of whether or not religion is more harmful, if possible.
Okay.
We could, if you guys want to come back for another one.
I'll jump into that right now. Why religion is more harmful.
Okay.
But if Godless wants to go, or if Gary wants to kick in, I'm sitting here.
As I said,
I'm going to be right back in a second. I got to get my phone charger, so I'm going to let this keep going.
I'm the lone religious person in this chat, so maybe I'm more apt than Godless to defend my own position.
Tell. Go ahead.
Sorry, what?
Right.
I didn't hear Gary.
I said I'm a Christian, but I'm a Quaker, so I'm the lone religious person in the cause, so I hold a God belief. So again, I would ask Amy and Robert, what harm am I doing to society by believing? I'm not hurting anybody, I'm not raping anybody, not stealing from anybody, I'm not doing anybody any harm. I go to my church and we do a lot of work for the poor and the homeless in my society. The thing is that, again, you're taking what fundamentalists do. And again, I will agree with you, they do harm. There are people out there who do religious-based harm. But again, saying that the Catholic Church, excuse me, has changed its things recently. The other people...
I want to argue against Nathan really quickly, just to point something out with objective morality and atheism. You see, the argument that the atheists will make, and this is people like Sam Harris, is they'll try to say that our objective morality is grounded in our preference for a particular consequence. But the thing is not everybody prefers certain consequences. If one person, I mean, it's not consistent. Your preference cannot also be your source. Okay, your preference is a source. So what we have is grounded in a moral standard, which is God.
Restoration, which hasn't happened for 200, 300 years. So again, they are trying to address these issues, but again, it's not as simple as do thing X. Again, it's a systemic thing and it takes time to fix. But if you've got systemic anything, if you've got systemic abuse, it takes years. It's like the systemic abuse in the prison system. It takes years of reform and going back to try and fix these things. So is it not reasonable to give them the time with a more reasonable person like Pope Francis, who has addressed these things and says, we need to fix these things. These things are in our back laws. We just need to bring in the policies to police these things.
And I would say it's not you personally, Gary. I think you're probably an amazing guy. You sound nice. You've been a gentleman so far. It's not about you personally. To me, it's about the macro claims and what we're trying to do as a people. It's not that each individual, and that's why I tried to point out, even though the label is anti-theist, it's not that I'm against you, it's that I'm against theism. It's that from what I can tell, there is no evidence for this being and the belief systems that they make. And I think that overall, it does a net negative more than it does a net positive. Because
see, one of the things that atheists don't really like is when I say Romans 1, but Romans 1 basically tells us, and I know that as an atheist, you don't think this is a good argument. If you don't believe Romans 1, you don't believe the Bible, obviously. But what Romans 1 basically says is that everybody in creation has been given a general revelation of God. And so we can look outside and just look at nature and have our general revelation of God. Now, some people suppress that information. And when they do, God sends a very powerful delusion and to let them live out their lives the way that they want. And so I've talked to people who were in that position before, who've actually come out of atheism, and who said that at the time when they were atheists, there was nothing anyone could say that would be convincing to them. And that's because they had this powerful delusion. So if you're in atheism and you're trying to break free of that, maybe look at Romans 1, maybe just look outside, look at the rainbows and look at the stars. I mean, seriously, how can you think that it's not, I know you're going to think this is incredulity, but I would say looking at the animals, looking at the plants, looking at the trees, I honestly don't think you can make a realistic position that we don't have a creator, especially if you look at the fact that we're within 10 habitable zones. I think they might even have found more. The Earth is sort of in this Goldilocks habitable zone that is so incredibly fine-tuned that the odds that that would occur, and the odds of all these cosmological constants and these other constants that are out there, are enormously against us. And so it's just another place that it serves that we have a creator.
I think that individual religionists do tons of good things. I'm not going to knock anybody for doing their works, being a kind and gentle person. It's just, I think the person who did that was you, not the religion.
And what I'll say is, Gary, I don't know you. You did an interview with Lilith and Peter, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it went well. I truly hope you're a good guy. My problem with it is that every Christian thinks it's always not their church. You know what I mean? So
what these atheists like to do, and actually what Robert is doing here is they like to point to some of the really bad actors in the Christian community and try to say that, oh, well, it's, you know, there's a bad Catholic priest up in this particular church, or they'll point to Westboro Baptist. That's an extreme version of some really bad actors in the Christian church, and they'll try to apply it to everybody in a really unfair way. My church, and he's going to say, yes, your church. Well, I wouldn't go to a church if I felt like there were bad actors in that church. I think most people make responsible decisions when they choose their churches, and there are many, many, many more good actors than there are bad actors in the church.
So when you point X, Y, and Z out, that's atrocious. It's never that person's church. They're never that type of Christian. And it's always the moderates that will keep an ideology alive. Because if Christianity was just Pat Robertson, Westboro Baptist Church, the numbers would be cut in half by tomorrow morning.
You see, he's actually admitting the fact that we have many, many moderates. Moderates are the ones that he should be in favor of. Okay, there aren't these people who are going out there like Matt Powell. He's a guy who's actually been in my chats before, Matt Powell. But he basically said that homosexuals should be something like gently executed. It's completely ridiculous. Nobody says that. But you do have some people making these really crazy assertions. And then what happened with him was he was picked up by Richard Dawkins. And so all of a sudden, all of the atheists know him. They all wanted him to come on their channels. He was saying this kind of stuff to really make Christians not look very good. And so that's the thing. They like to pick up on these tremendous outliers in the community rather than realizing that the vast majority of people inside the community do their best to try to listen to God's word and follow his commands.
It's the moderates that keep this thing going. And yeah, you don't need religion to be a good person. And so every time 10 Christians stand up and say, I'm a Christian, you're adding logs to that huge forest fire, right? And it just won't go away, and it gives it more power.
You don't need atheism to be a good person.
I never said that.
Hey, Godless is here. Hey, Godless, you did a good job. Proud of you.
I actually just said that 3 minutes ago. You're right. My character has got nothing to do with my atheism. It's just like when Christians say, well, what does atheism offer in a hard time? It's like, not a fucking thing. It's also like saying, what does geometry do for you in a hard time? Not a fucking thing, because it doesn't address that. It's simply, do you believe in any gods? The answer is no. Everything else is everything else. That's it.
What about a deism is a form of theism? A deist just believes in a God created the universe and there's no organized religion. The God doesn't intervene at all. They don't even have to believe in an afterlife. What's the problem with the deist? What's your problem?
I'm not talking about deist. I am talking about theist.
Anti-theism, deism.
How about this? I am talking about Christianity in general because I live in the United States,
Deist
and that's what I'm surrounded by,
I'm
Godless.
talking about
That
theism.
is what I am surrounded by.
A deist could be anti-Christian. You're saying that you're against deism. Why are you against an anti-Christian deist?
I
I'm
never
against
once
deism.
said I was against
You're
deism.
supposed to be
This is the
defending
second time you put
anti-theism.
words in my mouth, and that's not how it works.
Anti-theism. Defend anti-theism. Anti-theism
I'm
entails
pretty sure.
If Godless Girl wants to come in here, I would actually send Godless Girl a link if she's interested in coming in here. I was trying to get a hold of you on Twitter, Godless Girl. So anyway, so I would just say that I can send you a link. I'm not connected to you on Twitter. If you give me an email address, or if you email me, just tell me if you want, and you can connect to me. I'm at alwayslearning1225. Okay, so that's just putting that out there.
Both me and Amy already have.
Anti-theism entails that you're anti-deist who is anti-Christian.
And so I'm against deism because there's no evidence for deism. So I mean, it's the nicest version of the superstition.
They tend to be anti, you notice how people, they call themselves anti-theists. A lot of times on Twitter, people refer to themselves as that rather than anti-Christ, but then they go after Christians. So they're really anti-Christ. So just pointing that out.
I mean, it's just going, how little harm are you doing? Well, the deists, I mean, the least amount of harm, but it's still a stupid. I mean, how much?
What harm does Christians do? Now, I just wanted to point out a couple other studies really quickly that I hadn't gotten to before. So according to the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, adults and teens who consider religion very important and who attend religious services weekly were far less likely to smoke, drink, or use illicit drugs. Those battling drugs who participate in spiritually based support programs are more likely to maintain sobriety. In a survey of 5,387 young Swiss men between 2010 and 2011, Gamel and colleagues found that young men who indicated they believe in God are less likely to smoke marijuana, take ecstasy pills, or smoke cigarettes than their atheist or agnostic counterparts. And then the last thing I'll say is Christians, Jews, and Muslims in studies of youths and adults who scored higher on measures of religiosity were more likely to see their dentist, take their vitamins, and wear their seatbelt, and less likely to drink and smoke than their less religious counterparts. So there are some pretty good health benefits to belief, and especially on intrinsic religiosity, like I mentioned before. So let's go.
How much trouble are the people who are knocking on wood doing to society? Not very much. But if all of a sudden we start creating a knock on.
Oh, wait, Godless wants to come in. This is going to be good. Oh, Godless, you're going to come in here? All right, Godless, I'm going to send you a link. godlesskafir@gmail. Okay. All right, here we go. Let me just get out of here for just a second, everybody. Go over to my email. You guys can see this. I don't really care if you can see it. All right. Oh, thanks for Ducky for subscribing to me. godlesskafir@gmail. So let's go. Okay. All right, so I need to get the link. Let me stop sharing this for a second here. All right, so just hold on one second, everybody. I'm trying to get the link so I can invite Godless in here to comment. Where are we? Invite. Okay. Copy invitation. All right. Go over here and shoot it to Godless Kafir. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's on its way to you, Godless Kafir. So I think I need to monitor. I need to monitor this for just a second. So I'm going to go back to that in just a moment. So just hold on, hold your horses. I got to just see when she. Oh, actually, it'll show up when she comes here. Now that I think about it. So let me go back and share the screen again. Okay, here we go. Not that, where are we? Here we go, okay. Share the screen. Okay, so we're back to the debate, and Godless Kafir should show up hopefully soon. And while she's getting ready to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to our chat.
On wood society and the knock on wood people start governing our laws.
I don't know what that means.
Then do you know it? Do you know the superstition knock on wood?
No.
I mean,
Like what somebody says, oh, I hope
They're supposed to be lucky.
Like they knock on wood, so they say, "Oh, that was the one superstition I used to have, so I can relate to it that I've gotten rid of. Is that I've never broken a bone before, so I say that out loud, and people go, "Oh, you better knock on wood."
Godless
And
Kafir just
so,
showed up. Hold on one second.
I mean, that is what.
Let me just pause this. Okay. Godless Kafir, are you here? Oh, wait, I see you.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. I've only seen you once before. Somebody just sent me the link because you were streaming, so I'm kind of unsure of who you are. I've only heard of you a little.
Oh, okay. Well, my name's SJ, or I go by Stephanie. I mean, Stephanie is my real name. I go by SJ on YouTube, and I'm a Christian, and I've known Robert for a long time. I've had him on my channel before, and so I watched this debate, and I thought you actually did a killer job, and I tried to tweet you to let you know that I liked what you. I mean, because you're consistent with your views. Like it sounds to me like you're a relativist, but I think that that's very consistent, and I think you were calling them out for being inconsistent.
Oh, I'm not like a moral relativist.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a moral relativist. I just don't think that on the atheist worldview, a moral claim could be true or false.
Okay.
A moral relativist is saying that relative to them, their moral claims are true, which it doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. So I also wanted to, what else did I want to ask you? So have you always been an atheist? Were you born into an atheist family?
No, I was a Christian. I was like a really non-religious Christian until I was 19. But I used to be one of those atheists, one of those really militant, stupid atheists. And I think that's why I hate them so much, because I see my old self, which I hate, I'm ashamed of, in them. And you want me to link because I found a couple of your YouTube channels, and I watched, I had some spare time yesterday because I was trying to grade papers, and I was trying to look at different things to do while grading, to not grade, because that's my least favorite thing to do. And so I watched a couple of your YouTube channel, and I saw that you've gone out and done a lot of YouTube calling outs of people like Darth Dawkins. You've done a lot of with if this is the right channel, I'm pretty sure it is, because you had that little symbol on this. Yeah, so I saw that, and I saw, what else did I see? I watched your channel with David Silverman. And so do you know about that situation? Yeah, well, I know about what happened to David Silverman. Is that what you were? Yeah, like the atheist, it's a skeptic community, right? They're supposed to practice, like they demand evidence for everything. They take out all their leaders, like Neil deGrasse Tyson is that atheist physicist. Lawrence Krauss is a famous atheist physicist. Michael Shermer was the president of some skeptic thing. And then David Silverman was the president of American Atheists. And with no evidence, just a woman claiming that they sexually assaulted them, they fire these guys. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson had to cancel his tour, and Sam Harris wouldn't appear on a stage with Lawrence Krauss because some woman said he raped her. And David Silverman, actually, he got fired from American Atheists, and then he had another woman, a crazy woman, accused him, and then he had to resign from this other atheist thing he was working for. Yeah, I heard the whole David Silverman thing because I listened to Steve McRae's channel, and I listened to him on Steve McRae's channel, and so it had to do with something that sounded like to me it was consensual. So I actually felt kind of badly for him in his particular case. Do you practice apologetics? Yeah, I do. Are you familiar with? See, aside from all the moral stuff, what really irritates me about atheists is they'll come across presuppositionalist apologetics, and they're just so dishonest. Like a lot of them don't even understand the argument, and they never get to learn to understand the argument, and there's this cognitive dissonance where they think they're winning the debate. I'm Darth Dawkins' enemy, but I think he destroys most of the people he debates. Yeah, I found myself I was on a Brett Keane channel one time, and Darth Dawkins, that's the first time I met him, and he and I have different views on a younger creationism, and so he basically kind of put it at me, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, who's this guy? So it's kind of entertaining. But I'm not the best debater, which is one thing I realize my weaknesses. So I've done a few debates, but I don't get on there too much and do that. I'd rather just talk to people, and so. Oh, yeah. You thought I did good in that, but I didn't. I don't think I did good on that stream. I hadn't slept in a long time. I really want to talk to that Amy again. It's the things she says are so absurd. she was making a bunch of claims in another hang about consciousness. It's just, she claims she solved the hard problem of consciousness. It's just like, what the
I heard that. And
she
well,
doesn't even know what it is.
see,
I
that's,
guarantee she doesn't even know what it is.
well, you know what I liked about your point? I liked your point with North Korea, because it's true. I mean, look what that society is like. And so we're sort of, people are trying to get rid of Christianity, but Christianity has given us some pretty good property rights and foundations and equality and lots of good stuff. So if you don't have to, I mean, you don't necessarily have to follow Christianity, but it has been pretty decent to us over the years. And I think you recognize that by comparing us with North Korea.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to
I
listen?
also think people are just happier believing in God because of the social cohesion. Whether or not it's true, whether or not it causes lots of harm in the world, I think people are happier with it.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's it can help with cohesion. It can help with the churches and community and that kind of thing. And it's hard if you're in a society where there's high levels of belief in God. I mean, actually, I've seen studies where if you're in a society, say like Sweden, where people tend to be lower in their beliefs of God. Kent Hovind saying you're a closet Christian. I don't think so. I don't think you're a closet Christian, but I'd say that if you're in a society,
Kent Hovind said, "I'm a closet Christian."
It's not the real Kent Hovind. It's this.
Oh,
it's like guy who's in here, calls himself Ken Hovind CPA. But no, I just want to say that if you're in a society that has higher levels of Christianity and you're Christian, then you tend to be happier. But if you're in a society that has lower levels and you're not Christian, then you also could be happier when you kind of go along with what the majority is. That's what the studies that I've seen have said. And it kind of makes sense. So if you're in a place like Sweden, it has actually pretty high levels of atheism, and you're an atheist, then you might be happier than if you're in a place that have higher levels of some other belief system.
yeah. They also, when they point to places like Sweden, they're always they're saying like, oh, look at these places with high percentage of atheists. They're like lower crime rates and stuff. But that could be, the correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation. So that could be due to other things. Maybe that they're less religious there because of the same thing that's causing them to be less violent.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And you're mentioning something that Matt Dillahunty always likes to go to. He likes to go to this Gregory S. Paul study, which is a univariate analysis, and saying that atheism correlates with happiness, but it excludes things like wealth and homogeneity and other things that are in Sweden that could help explain some of the happiness too.
Suicide rates are way happier among way higher among the non-religious.
Yeah, that's true too. And especially if they're in a place tends to be more religious, they might be unhappier that way. And so I saw on your Twitter account, you're in Florida too.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah, I am. Actually, I lived over by West Palm a long time. I was over in Boca Raton for, 21 years.
Oh, actually, that's where I lived when I first moved here. I love it. I'm from New York State, so I love the weather. It's amazing.
Oh,
I'm
I
in
love it too.
Jacksonville now, so I still get the seasons, you know?
Yeah, that's nice. I'm in Tampa. I'm outside of Tampa, actually. So yeah, no, that's cool. So do you want to look at a little bit more of this debate that you were in? I actually started from the very end. I watched a little bit of it with the objective morality stuff, and then I went back to the beginning, and we've watched most or a lot of it now, but you want to go back and look at it and make some commentary?
Oh, sure. I'm kind of ashamed of it. I did a horrible job that day, but I was planning on going there and just mopping the floor with them, but that didn't happen. I think it was bad luck and my lack of sleep, but I'll listen to it.
We don't have to either. We could keep talking on other stuff, or we could even talk about that debate and some of your other views on that kind of stuff. Whatever you want to do. What's your preference?
No, you can play some of it.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and get back over to that. All righty. Let's bring it up the screen. Yeah, so you were in New York. My sister lived in New York for a really long time, in the city actually, and then she was in New Jersey for a while, and so I used to go up there and visit her, and I like it up there, but I don't like the weather. I hate the weather. I remember visiting her, and she had a Volkswagen, and it snowed so much, her whole Volkswagen was like under a pile of snow, and I grew up in Chicago, so I get that. So, all right, let me go. So you can see the screen. Here we go. Oh, actually, make sure the sound's on. Hold on one sec. Okay, yeah, sound's on. And I wouldn't say you did horrible in the debate. In fact, in the chat here, if you go back through the chat later, you're going to see a lot of people saying that you're doing a good job, including atheists. So.
Theism is, to me, just a different form.
Okay, but I would argue it's because it's based upon different things. It can be based upon one's experience, because some people have said, and again, I've never experienced this, so again, I can only go that they've actually seen it. And that's what we go by. We go by ancestors. Now, you could say it's some sort of psychological problem, but again, they are taking that into account. Some people, like myself, have gotten there through reason, through studying the literature. And I think it isn't necessarily a superstition, it's a faith, which is that it's based upon a trust that God exists. Because again, I admit, and I'll freely admit now, I can be incorrect because I'm a human being and we're prone to error.
Good for you,
I'm
Gary.
prone to error.
That's good.
But aren't you two prone to error? Aren't you prone to making mistakes and making inferences when they're not there?
100%.
That's the whole point I'm trying to get across, is that we're all edging our bets. I hate using that term.
Can I ask what your definition of faith is?
For me, religiously based faith is belief that God will exist as a entity that exists in the world.
I want to comment on that because I think what Amy's getting at, and you can think if you see the same thing, Gigi. But I think what Amy's getting at is what Aaron Ra does a lot is he tries to say that we have faith without having any evidence. But in our Bible, if you're a Christian, it basically calls on you to try to seek the evidence. And so I would say it's evidence based. And so that's something that I think she and people like Aaron Ra. Have you listened to Aaron Ra?
I hate Aaron Ra. I have a video on my channel of me, Aaron Ra, screaming at me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I got to link your channels. I know you have 2 channels, I think, don't you?
Yeah, you'll come across the Despicable Welfare Queen video that went viral.
Oh, did it?
My other channel, not the Darth Dawkins one.
So I did see you actually, it looks like you were going over into Walgreens and places like that and kind of calling people out. Is that the one is that the Despicable? I didn't listen to the Despicable one.
Yeah, there's me like doing ghetto trashy stuff on there.
So that's actually funny. When you say it went viral, how many people saw it?
Oh, the Welfare Queen video, there's 200-something thousand views on my channel, but at one point it had like 3 million views on a Facebook post, and it got picked up by all these right-wing news sites that thought it was anti-welfare. But I was just doing it to piss people off. I wasn't making a political point.
See, I think it's fair to say, you remind me of, there's some people who like to shake things up a little bit. Like I've had Steve McRae on my channel a few times, and I've been on Adam Friended's channel, and I think that they might be kind of similar to you. They'll say what they think without really worrying about people's feelings. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Steve McRae is my friend, and I see him, he calls out the dishonesty when it comes to how atheists define atheism. And he's ostracized himself, like he's made enemies out of Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty because of how he defines it as, look, if you're calling yourself an atheist, not an agnostic, then they try to say there's no burden on them to give evidence why God doesn't exist. But this is the question I ask them, that I say, do you think it's more likely than not that no gods exist? You're calling yourself an atheist. They're going to say yes, right? Majority of the times they're going to say yes. That's how I pin them down. I say, okay, that's a probabilistic claim. What's your evidence for that? And then Steve McRae and I argue with atheists on Facebook before. It's just, then they just get angry, start yelling.
Yeah. Now I finally found somebody who I'd say is on the same level of Steve, who's in the female atheist population, because I haven't met so many people like you before. I've met, obviously, like I said, Adam Friended and Steve McRae, and I like that they call people out, because this whole idea of lack of belief, Steve always talks about that, and he's like, just say there are no gods or there's no God. Don't say that you lack the belief because you want to shift the burden of proof onto the theist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All right, so let's go with this.
Well, when I say the world, I mean, do you start to the universe? Because again, if I start minutiae into beyond the universe, again, I could go into my scientific theory of where the God comes from, but then we'd be here all day. I'd rather not do that.
But is it just a belief? Or is it just, normally, correct me if I'm wrong, but normally what I get is the belief without evidence, the evidence of things unseen.
Hope's not seen. Yes, that's the whole thing about faith. Because I can't prove it. I can't go to, like the University of Manchester. Sorry, I live in Manchester, so I'm using it because it's one of the biggest universities in the world. I can't go to University of Manchester and put God under a microscope, because if we could, then this whole theist debate wouldn't be necessary because we'd have an absolute answer.
But isn't
So
that
the thing is, it's based upon no, because again, it's based upon philosophical ideas. It's based upon inferences we have in the world. So again, it's a taking of what we know and taking from that. Now, there are things that you could say are superstitions, like, for example, the whole thing of maybe holding the rosary can be a superstition. I'd say probably not, because it's probably more of a habit. But again, we could discuss that as a minutiae.
Since you mentioned the rosary, I was just going to mention that I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I went to Catholic grade school and a Catholic freshman high school for my freshman year. And then I left because of some of the things that the church was doing that Robert mentioned earlier in this conversation. But I left because they weren't handling the priests well. And so I got upset with them. And I was floundering around for about 20 years without really attaching myself to many faiths.
Oh, what do you mean handling them well?
Well, I think that the priests should have been imprisoned, essentially. If any priests are those ones who are abusing the little boys.
Oh, but that wasn't happening personally at your place, right?
No, it
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
I'm just saying in general, when I would hear stuff on, like in Boston, things going on, I would get upset with the Pope. I'm like, do something about this. Don't just sort of shove it under the blanket or under the carpet. And so that drove my entire family, with the exception of my sister, away from the Catholic Church, because the way those people were not handling it correctly. So I'm probably, and now I'm back. I came back to Christianity sort of in kind of a full force. And so that's been probably about since 2012 or so is when I kind of came back. But I left for a while, so I was kind of weak Christian, I guess you could call it. So.
But you mean non-religious, not devout?
I definitely was not devout for a lot of years. And I was definitely, and I was looking at Buddhist texts, and I thought they were more interesting. And I liked that spirituality and that new age stuff. And I was reading all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was superior. And then I sort of, in 2012, I sort of had an epiphany and a number of different other experiences, but I had been away for a while. So that's kind of how I can relate to maybe where you are a little bit. And so I'm just saying that. All right, so I'll go to the next.
The problem that I'm having is that, again, the things you mentioned before about the pedophilia, the stuff like that, happens in secularism and is just as defended in secularism. Now, if it was not, you probably would have a point, but it is. And I'll give you a perfect example. David Silverman was accused of having, I think it was raping some woman or having sexual assault with some woman.
No evidence. All it was a claim by 3 different women, and he lost his job at American Atheist and had to resign from another organization just because some woman said that he sexually assaulted her.
Out of curiosity, what do you make for this thing with Joe Biden and this woman making the accusation, and also with Brett, what was his name? Brett, the Supreme Court judge. I'm forgetting his last name for some strange reason. Did you think the women were telling the truth in those, like with Christine Blasey, whatever her name is?
Oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't follow the news anymore, but I just, from what I know from the past, is I think that women are highly motivated to accuse, just for, I don't know if it's for attention or for money, accuse famous men of it. But I think it's become more dangerous for like a man to be alone in a room with a woman because of false accusations than for like a woman to be sexually harassed. Like, because see, if you're sexually harassed, I don't know if they're accusing him of rape, but a lot of these are just like not rape that they're being accused of, just sexual harassment or whatever. Look, you feel mildly uncomfortable for a few minutes, but these men have their whole lives and their whole careers, annihilated because of these false accusations. So I think it's actually more dangerous for a man to be alone with a woman.
I agree with you. You know, I teach human resource management in college. It's one of the classes I teach. And so one of the things I teach are on the legal rights and on protection from sexual harassment in the workplace. And sometimes you'll get where it definitely did occur in the workplace, like that woman who was at Uber, Susan Fowler. You do have examples like that where they've got it verified in text messages and that kind of thing. But then you have examples of people that I feel like it could be falsely accused. Like I looked at Brett Kavanaugh. I said, so thank you in the chat. Somebody tell me Brett Kavanaugh. I looked at his situation and she couldn't even remember where they were. She had barely any memories that she could string together. And I thought, if something occurred that was so brutal, why would she not be able to remember the details? Because usually you can remember the details on instances that happened in your past. And so I felt like she was just coming out of the woodwork, out of the blue, and saying, oh, by the way, he harassed me. And I don't know about Joe Biden's harass or the person who's making the claims, but I'm like you. I actually am skeptical of women sometimes being opportunists.
Yeah, they're also given too much of a platform when they do make the accusation.
Yeah. Yeah. Suddenly she'll have a book out, you know, and you just wonder,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. It doesn't seem, I want to look at I'm looking at the chat. I want to see if any of you guys have any questions for Godless Girl and or comments if you want to make them. So far, everybody's been pretty nice to you in the chat. It sounds like they thought you were pretty funny and, you know, you gotta, so, okay. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to get across is that there are bad
How
people.
rational the atheist community is.
But the point I was trying to get across, Godless, was that there could be bad people doing bad things. But the thing is, when they're on our side of the fence, and I hate using that term, we tend to defend them more. We tend to defend more what they say and do than if they're on the other side. Like I've seen people defend horrible stuff that I don't believe it was saying. Well, if a believer was to say it, they're not held to the same standard, and I'm guilty of this. So I'd ask the other two: is there anything that a non-believer has said that you both find morally repugnant?
See, my thing with that is like Robert said, it's not that secular and religious people don't do it. We have a problem with the fact that they seem to have known and not reported it anyway. That they not only did they know and not report it anyway, they knew, didn't report it, and then helped move them around. So it's not just like it, because of course it happens it's going to happen to secular, anyone, because we're human. The problem we have is that religion seems to give people this rain check. Like, I don't understand. Do you, okay, it probably could, but there are not many reasons I can imagine for why anyone would cut a woman's or man's genitalia beyond biological reasons in the doctors and religion. It always seems to be religion.
Don't
And I
think
feel
that-
Wait, you were really good here. I agree with you on this point, actually. Let me just keep this going. Wait, I got a question for you, actually, before we go to that. And as far as circumcision, I'm actually for circumcision because I'm in the United States is one reason it's so prevalent here. Like Robert pointed out, that thing with the locker room, it's just sort of, people just get it. I got it for my sons, not because of religious reasons. I just got it because I thought everybody pretty much got it. I didn't realize there was a population of people against it.
Oh yeah, if I had a son, I would do it because I think most uncircumcised men wish they had been circumcised because we're already living in a society with a stigma, I guess. I mean, I think it's more aesthetic. Like, I think my partner Gary says that here. It also seems more hygienic. And there's different forms of circumcision where one is very not invasive at all. It's just like a little snip of skin. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I agree. And the things that I've actually seen some studies on it is more hygienic and you're less likely to get certain diseases because of it. And so, shoot, I just got pushed out of the, okay, somebody asked a super chat and I just got pushed away from it, but it was a super chat asking you, what is holding, spacebar apologetics, what is holding you back from believing in Christianity? Is there any chance that, is there anything that you specifically don't like about the Christian faith?
Well, I don't think liking or disliking something should determine whether you believe it's actually true or not. I just don't. I don't have a rational reason to believe it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, so here we go. Because actually, I even like your expression right there. That's kind of, here we go.
You don't think that atheists circumcise their children?
Well, I think atheists circumcise their children because we have a religious influence right now. I don't think that we would circumcise our children if it wasn't for the
Their children
Torah.
because Christians.
It's not atheism. And I got to keep going back to this. Do atheists circumcise their kids?
No,
Sure, I guess.
Robert.
And my kids won't be circumcised.
Amy just said the reason that somebody would circumcise their children is because of religion or something doctors, which isn't the case because we have atheists circumcising their sons all the time.
But why?
It's not because Christians. It's not.
See, I totally agree with you because, as I said, when I first had my kids, I was sort of a really weak Christian. But I got it the same reason that you just said. I got it because everybody. I mean, it's just really common. I thought that was the norm.
They're so whiny, aren't they?
Yeah, they just seem kind of. They look like they're. Actually, I like this. Let's keep going.
Not because Christians.
I never said Christians. This one's on the Jews.
Practice.
As much
It
as
is
I
a
love my
religious
family.
practice that has gained traction in this country. And again, you keep hanging your hat on things that are atheistic.
Robert, do you agree with her that the only reason people circumcise their children is because they're religious or because
I very rarely use the word only, and I will let Amy speak for Amy because she's a grown person
only
making a truckload of sense right now. And I'm saying what I think is the reason why in America, people are circumcising is because it has gained traction from a religious practice. I'm not going to sit here and try and trap Amy into a yes or no and use words like only. I'm not going to.
I have to tell you something funny. Somebody wanted to debate me on circumcision, and it was a male. And I'm like, I'm not debating a man on circumcision. I would be just really awkward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that ends up getting kind of like, okay, let's go.
Do it. I'm not playing that game.
So it's because of their culture, which happens to have religious backing. It's not only because of they're religious.
I mean, that just means it's complex. And I mean, I'm sure Robert and I would agree with you that it's complex.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm incorrect, but hasn't it become more of a aesthetic thing now that a lot of men choose to do it to make it more aesthetically pleasing? I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's as far as I'm understanding that it's culturally practiced in America now. Again, I'm from Britain, so we don't.
I don't know many men who did it. But let me tell you, if it was 18-year-olds doing it, like if the choice was at 18, they had to do it, I'd be all for it. The problem is that they're doing it to babies without a choice. If at 18...
See, I agree with you that that's not a big deal. Nathan Orman is saying, do I not feel guilty that when, and I'll ask you this question too, do I not feel guilty that when kids are grown up and married, they will have reduced sensitivity in sex with their loved partner from something you chose that they didn't have control for? No, I'm not going to feel guilty about that at all, because I have seen studies, Nathan. I don't remember the disease, but because of the hygiene issues, you've got a possibility of less possibility of getting particular diseases, and so that has been documented. And so, what do you think about that, Godless? Are you going to feel guilty if you have kids and
I don't even know if the increased sensitivity is true. It might be. I will have to look into that. In my personal experience, it hasn't. It seems the opposite for me. For the men I've been with, I had one ex-boyfriend who was uncircumcised, and he had some problem where sex was even uncomfortable for him if he wasn't wearing a condom and he wasn't circumcised. I don't know. Maybe he had too much foreskin and it needed to be cut or something, and he had impotence problems. So. That's just my personal experience, though. That's not even like hardly weak evidence that it's better to be circumcised. But the men I know that had high sex drives were circumcised.
Yeah, it's a very common practice in the United States. And I have another, John V is saying, SJ, why do you think God created the foreskin if really it's best to remove it? Well, I always make it's kind of like cutting our hair.
Yeah.
We have to cut our hair and you just remove the foreskin. It's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. And so, okay, here we go.
They're like, time to get circumcised.
Babies. Atheists are doing it to their babies without a choice, not because they're religious.
Okay, but do you think they're wrong? Do you think those atheists are wrong?
No, I don't. But I'm not here to debate child.
Okay, I do. That's what I'm saying, because I think it's a religious influence.
Anti-theism, yeah.
Well, it's irrelevant. I'm pointing out that you said the only reason they do it is because of religion, and it's not.
Yeah. I would say it's a Jewish practice. I would say that the Christians in this country have picked up a Jewish practice
It's
that I
not-
don't
it's
think.
not-
You know, when I did it, I didn't even know it was a Jewish practice. I wasn't even familiar with the Old Testament barely. So I just they asked me in the hospital if I wanted to get it done. I'm like, yeah, do it.
What does it even mean to be Jewish? There's there's Muslim countries that do it that don't have one Jew living in them.
That's true. Well, it's in the Muslim holy books too, I guess. So they also are supposed to get uncircumcised. Why don't you have the same attitude towards female genital mutilation? Because I just think that that's totally gross and wrong. What do you? What about you, Godless?
What's the question?
Why don't we have the same attitude towards female genital mutilation?
Oh, well, it seems more female genital mutilation. Even the most minor ones seems way more mutilating, right?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. So, and John V saying hair grows back. It's good to have it. Do you really think it is a good analogy? I guess I could try to think of another analogy. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't really think of another analogy. When we have hair, it grows longer. It doesn't.
Why does God give us the attach the umbilical cord if we're not supposed to cut it?
No, that's true. That's a good one.
That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, good one. That's a good one.
Have any reason for
of them being Jewish.
Where does it come from?
It's
Okay,
it's an
where
aesthetic
does
of them.
cutting the tip off a men's genitalia come from? Where does that come from?
How is
It
that
comes from the Middle East.
Because I'm anti-theist.
What?
Answer the
Okay.
question, you'll get your answer.
What?
Where does cutting the skin off men's genitalias come from? Where did that concept originate?
I don't know. It's probably Judaism.
I'll
but
help
that
you.
doesn't mean that they're
Ding, ding,
doing-
ding, ding,
That
ding.
doesn't mean that they're doing it in virtue of being Jewish.
What does it mean?
Like Gary said, some atheists are cutting their baby sticks because for aesthetic reasons, not because they're Jewish.
Thank you. I think we have a good reason for anti-theism, though. Isn't that a good reason? Some people are cutting their babies' dicks for aesthetic reasons. What a perfect baby.
I don't see. Do you see that follows what she said?
It's not even related.
That's what I said. All of a sudden, she's like, "Well, it doesn't have anything to do with what you just said."
Yeah, she said, I said they're cutting. She said they're cutting their babies' dicks for aesthetic reasons. That's a good reason to be anti-theist. When we're talking about atheists doing it for aesthetic reasons, and that's a good reason to be atheist.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It totally did not follow. And so, okay, here we go.
Time to chop.
What?
How is this?
I don't see this being complicated.
I know. I don't.
really
Thank you, Robert.
I just think, Godless, you're making this a little bit harder than what it needs to be.
Robert, do you think that the atheists are cutting their babies' dicks in virtue of Jewish?
I've already said that, yes, I'm pretty sure there are atheists.
That's actually hilarious the way you just phrased that. It's like, in virtue of being Jewish.
who get their kids circumcised.
For aesthetic reasons.
And there's a religious
Yeah,
traction.
yeah.
I was born and raised in locker rooms. I've been playing sports since I could crawl. And I can be the first one to tell you, the guy with the uncircumcised crank gets destroyed. He's different. There is definitely a societal pressure with conforming and circumcision, and that's just one of the examples. So yeah, I'm pretty sure atheists circumcise their kids. It is a religious practice that has gained traction in the United States. That's why people still do it. And for us, when an atheist does it, it's probably out of societal pressure to make sure that your kid fits in. When a religious person does it, it's because they read a book that says, by the way, see this kid that's been born intact and perfectly whole? Go cut some skin off of his dick. Now, like I said before, when an atheist does something, it's on the atheist. When someone who's religiously based does something, it's on their religion. I can learn from my mistakes. Tell me how much religion has changed in the last 2,000 years.
A lot.
My sister just got married 4 years ago. She's gay. That was a religious-based initiative. They have not changed and they will not change. So if you want to know why
yes,
we
they
are
have.
anti-theist, it's for stuff.
Okay, I want to say one more thing. John V just says, if you compare foreskin with the umbilical cord and the umbilical cord is cut only after it's completely lost its vital function, do you think the foreskin has a vital function? And I could say, I'll compare the foreskin to an appendix. How about that one too? Just add another one, because I had to have my appendix removed and it must not serve too much of a function there. So there's certain things that happen. So as far as his argument with the locker room, I think that really isn't an anti-theist argument. What do you think?
No, I think he's trying to say just because it has religious roots. But it's like, what? So like when the Egyptian women first started painting their faces, that was for like the gods or something, right? So what? Are we now gonna blame makeup, the pressure to wear makeup on religion because it originated with the Egyptians doing it for gods?
Oh, that's a good comparison. I like that. You're right. Yeah, and both of us have makeup on now, so seems.
But you could say that. You could say that if you're just saying it has religious roots, you could say that about almost any tradition that anybody practices in the United States. It's in virtue of religion, like gift giving. You want to blame that on religion?
Yeah. Well, even the idea of hand washing, and in the Bible, it specifies how people should wash their hands. And so, would you say we should not wash our hands anymore because it came out of the Bible?
Right. Well, I'm just saying you wouldn't say, whether it's good or bad, you wouldn't even say that that's like they're doing it because of religion, giving gifts because of religion, right? Just because it might have long ago historical roots in it, it's not always going to be because of the cause.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a good point. All right, let's go.
Like that. Yes, Gary.
Sorry, you're debating regardless, but again, you're saying stuff that isn't true, that religion hasn't changed in 2,000 years. It has. Because again, like, all right, I'll give you a prime one if you'd like. Do you know Iran?
Say that again.
Iran.
Yeah.
Right. Now, before 1981, I'd say 92, I'm thinking around that point. The Muslims of that time were very much moderate Muslims in that they were having drink parties, they were having mass gatherings, they were having a good old time. And then guess who wanted to join the party? The Americans. And they decided that they didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that the person in charge wouldn't do business with them. So what they did is put a religious-based leader in there, and he changed the society on that. Now that's a negative one. A positive is that, again, the Reformation changed Christianity quite a lot in quite a lot of ways. Like divorce wasn't allowed before that in a lot of Christian countries. A lot of things about, for example, the priests allowed to. I think recently, that the Pope says he's up for priests getting married. There's been a lot of things that I can name.
Okay.
Like, for example, I'm a Quaker mainly because we were one of the main pushes behind the abolition of slavery. And that's one reason.
Yeah, I wanted to point out what he says about abolition of slavery. A lot of people, they just like they did in this thing, is they're going to talk about what's in the Bible as far as biblical slavery, and they try to compare the biblical slavery to the antebellum slavery, and they say that they're going to say this in the debate that a lot of Christians were slaveholders and slave owners in the antebellum times, and I agree with that. And some Christians pulled verses out of the Bible to support that. And there was actually a slavery Bible that some Christians created where they pulled the verses out that had any sort of positive treatment towards slaves, or the idea that people were told not to kidnap slaves. They were basically forbidden to kidnap slaves. So going back to antebellum and trying to say that all Christians were slave owners or something like that isn't really a very honest position. But there were certainly some. So in Iran, yeah, I wouldn't want to live in Iraq or Iran or any of those kind of places. So that's, how did you, actually, let me ask you this, Godless, how did you get the name kafir? I see that means something like, is that coming from the Muslim faith or?
Oh, it's this singular for not kufar, but the singular for what a Muslim calls a non-Muslim, whether they're atheist or not. I used to be really anti-Islam, and then I changed my mind.
Oh, really? So you said you were raised in the Christian faith, and then because I think I saw one of your videos from a long time ago that you did do something on anti-Muslim. So I was thinking to myself, I wondered if you came out of the Muslim faith.
No, I used to be so Islamophobic though that I wanted to deport all Muslims from Europe. I was crazy.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, no, it's, I actually have a lot of my students are Muslims. And so I am pretty familiar. Right now they're practicing Ramadan. So they've got 30 days of fasting where they're not allowed to eat from sunrise to sunset. So I have to give them credit for doing that because I've never fasted in my life. Sorry to admit that, guys, but it's true.
I think the praying 5 times a day would be harder than the fasting for 30 days.
Yeah, they pray. And that's the thing, when they're in my classes, a lot of times, especially my night class, I'll have Muslims in there and they'll leave the class for a little while to go off and pray, and then they come back.
One thing about these atheist organizations, though, is I think they're so angry at Christians, but then they let the Muslims slide right by. Like, now you can't even call a Christmas tree in some public schools in America because it's Christmas is Christian. You have to say like holiday, like teachers aren't allowed to say the word Christmas. But then we have like national try a hijab on in school day, right? Now imagine the outrage from the atheists if we had like national try on a Christian cross at school day. It's so hypocritical.
That is hypocritical. And I noticed that too. I noticed a lot of them will get behind Ilhan Omar, I forget what her exactly state she's from, but a lot of people will get behind her, but then they'll go against any sort of Christian, like they get really upset when they see Trump leading some prayers and that kind of thing. I'm not a Republican, by the way, but I'm also not a Democrat. I'm in the middle. But they get upset with that kind of thing, and they get upset with, like you mentioned, actually you mentioned in this debate, you talked about American atheists and how they spend all this money to get rid of a cross that's on a public property.
That's silly.
Yeah. So you've talked to David Silverman. I know you've because he's an interesting character too, because he's considers himself a firebrand atheist. What's your take on that?
I used to be a fan of that stuff. You know, I remember watching David Silverman with tears in my eyes when I was like back in 2012, and I just totally, it's just all a joke to me now. Like he was on Discord the other day arguing, and besides the movement and the politics and all that, David Silverman doesn't even know how to debate. Like he was screaming about, oh, God's an angry man, invisible man in the sky, and he was trying to like debate these dumb Christians on Discord, and he couldn't even stand his ground against these Christians who don't even know apologetics. It's just it's a shame to the atheist community that was one of their leaders. And like Matt Dillahunty's another one.
Matt Dillahunty's debating tonight, by the way, one of my friends, Jonathan Sheffield.
Oh, good. I hope he gets wrecked.
You are hilarious. You know what? I just went and I did a video on David Silverman when he was in a debate with Frank Turek, because I was watching it and I thought to myself, David was just going crazy about God in the Old Testament and Genesis and how God would allow this stuff. And I was like, if you don't believe in God, why are you so mad about what God did in the Old Testament? I mean, why does he get so fired up? And so it just completely cracked me up. But
I get so angry. Did you watch the whole debate? There was a really funny part of that debate where for the rebuttal, Frank Turek played a video or something, and then
yes, that's the part that I watched.
Yeah, that's so funny. And then when David Silverman was going over his rebuttal time, and Frank Turek was like, "Hey, you're out of time," he goes, "Hey, I let you play a video." In like this formal debate on stage at a university, both of them looked silly.
Oh, that was gold, actually. I mean, I have to say, David Silverman, I saw him just recently, even on Steve McRae's channel. So he's comic gold, comedy gold to me, I think. And we've got Dillahunty tonight. They're doing it on if the four gospels were written by the authors named. That's what they're going to be debating tonight, Matt Dillahunty and Jonathan Sheffield. So
okay,
that was funny. So here we go. Let's see.
Is that I'm a Quaker, because again, and I know anti-war as well. Again, it depends what you mean by religion has changed, because it has. But
okay,
again,
you know what, Gary?
Incremental terms.
You're right. So one, I like you. Two, I'm going to walk back what I said just a little bit, because I agree with you on those points. So I won't say it won't changes, kind of, but the progress that religion has made is so far behind everyone else, right? And so I remember when, I think it was Pope Francis, when he got appointed, and one of the things he said was, I still remember because my phone was blowing up, Oh, we love Pope Francis. He said atheists can be good people. Do you know who else has been saying that? Every fucking atheist on the planet since the dawn of time. And now here we are in 2000 whatever, and someone finally said they're okay. He said that gay people were okay.
See, I don't think he's making a fair statement. The assertion here is that no one has ever said that besides the Pope up until now, and I don't think that's fair. I'm certain there's some Christians through the centuries who've said the same thing. What do you think?
I don't understand. What is he saying? I don't understand. What is he saying?
He's trying to say that his basic assertion is that Christianity is backwards, and that it took until now for the Pope to finally say that some atheists can be good people or have morals or something like that. He's saying as if no one said that ever before, who's coming from the Christian community. I think that's silly to say.
Yeah, how would he even know unless he's heard everybody that's ever come from the Christian side as a leader talk?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't see his point as being terribly valid, but let's go.
Every gay person and every gay ally on the planet has been saying that since the dawn of time. And so me personally, I'm not going to sit here and give the Catholic Church or any church an applause for doing something they should have done years ago. To me, it's the equivalent when my 3-year-old takes a dump, wipes his backside, washes his hand, and comes out and, Daddy, I did it. I'm going to say, way to go, son. When my son turns 33 and comes out and says, Dad, I wash my hands after I poop. You're supposed to, right? And so I'm not going to give the church credit for doing something that should have never happened in the first place. And again, to go back to what me and Amy have said from the get-go, superstition hurts. And when your superstition, when your man in the sky makes you call that gay person a faggot, tell them that they chose their sinful lifestyle. By the way, you can't get married. You are less than the person getting married and divorced 27 times. There's the problem.
You know, one thing that he doesn't point out that I think is kind of another unfair thing is that actually, if you look at the surveys, most Christians support gay marriage here in the United States. And so I think it's not really, I mean, I don't think it's fair to clump all Christians together and make these like broad-based assertions about them. What do you think?
Look, we live in a Christian country, and look at the Westboro Baptist Church. They're the most hated family in America, and we live in a Christian country. That's what there is to say about Christians, is that the Westboro Baptist Church is the most hated family in America in a Christian country. So
yeah, there are Christians like me who can't stand the Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, they make the rest of us look bad. I don't like what they're doing out there with their picketing and showing up at people's funerals. I mean, what in the world's wrong with them? So I don't like the Westboro Baptist Church, and I don't like anybody who says some of the things that Robert is saying, you know, attributing to all Christians, which I don't think is fair.
I actually have to go, but you should have me back on some other time. We can watch some videos and I can rip apart what the atheists are saying. Oh, I remember where I saw you though. After Brett came, you were on Tom Rabbit's.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah, he's another. I used to be good friends with him. He's another one of these scumbag atheists. He started doing Patreon and wanting to expand his channel and his Discord. So he started taking control, making all these decisions that he didn't actually like. He was just doing it for money. And now I'm banned from his Discord now. But yeah, he's another one of those scumbags.
Oh man, yeah. I was on with him once, and I've been on a few channels, but I'd love to have you back. And maybe we can you want to listen to part of like a David Silverman video, or maybe, I even have a better idea. How about if we go and we listen to the Matt Dillahunty debate tonight sometime?
Sure. I don't know. See, that's about theology. I mean, I don't know very much about theology, but we can maybe do that. But actually a different Matt Dillahunty video would be better. I can tell you some ones where Matt Dillahunty got wrecked.
Oh, let's
actually,
see that.
my boyfriend's an atheist, but he's called into the atheist experience twice, pretending to be a Christian, and argued with Matt. And both times, Matt looked dumb and ended up hanging up on my boyfriend.
Oh my gosh, maybe we should watch that. You want to do that?
Maybe. Yeah, I'll email you or whatever.
Matt Dillahunty hung up on me too, by the way.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'll have to watch that.
Oh, you don't want to. I sounded like a smug. I mean, this was awful. It was in 2017 and I got on there and I had this chip on my shoulder thinking I was going to get Matt, and because I'd just been listening to him and I didn't like anything he was saying. And so I went in there with a chip on his shoulder and I started saying, why do you think the apostles were so brave? And he said, and why do you think they came out? And he got mad at me and he hung up. And then he said, you're just wasting my time. And I said, of course I'm wasting your time. That's stupid. And the stupid thing went like 500,000 people have watched that video, that embarrassing video. So it's unfortunate. It's Stephanie from Tampa. If you want to, they misspelled my name. We put a Y at the end of it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's terrible.
Okay, I'll talk to you. I'll be back on. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, great. Thank you for coming on. All right, everybody in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and probably cut the screen out, cut the stream out as well. I'm going to come back there, and everybody enjoyed having you on here. I'm sure of that. Oh, so let's get back to where I was. All right, coming back to the stream really quickly. Yeah, you remember that, Cameron? So anyway, I would say I had a fun time. I think it was really good having Godless Girl on it. She seems like a pretty solid person, and so I enjoyed that. And I definitely will have her back on again when she wants to come back on, and so we can chat about some interesting stuff. And so thank you so much, everybody, for coming in here, and thank you for showing up. Please like and subscribe and come again. I'm going to be tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern. I'm going to be on Discord on Catholic Canadians channel, and I don't know if it's Catholic Canadians channel. It's called something like Religious Debates, and I got in there. I found the channel actually when I was in Godless Girls Twitter. I saw a reference to that channel, so I went in there and I found this particular person. So I'm supposed to get in there and talk to a bunch of random people over 40 minutes. They're going to ask me questions, so we'll see what the answers are, and if I like it enough, maybe I'll copy it to my channel. So I will see you very soon. You guys have a great Friday or Saturday, whatever it is where you are. Bye-bye.